Well, hello everyone. I am interviewing yet again another individual regarding the topic of circumcision or contactivism, and this person's name is Nokomi. Nokomi, you want to introduce yourself and tell the audience a little about yourself and how you're connected to this topic?
Hi guys. So my journey started when I became pregnant with my firstborn. I decided to opt for a natural birth, and in a group, someone was like, "Hey, have you researched circumcision?" And I was like, "No, I didn't really even know that it was a thing." Um, and immediately, like when I Googled what it was, I was like, "I cannot do that. Like, why would my child be born with something that they're not supposed to have?" Um, and eventually I found certain activism groups and, went from there. Um, the biggest thing regarding it that was conflicting was, the conversation with my husband, my fiance at the time. Um, he immediately said that he wanted our son to be circumcised because he was himself, and that was it. Like
Hmm.
he was pretty argumentative over it. And so I was like, why don't we sit down and look into this together? Like, look at the reasons why other places don't really do it. And so he agreed to that. And we also listened to one being performed. And after, you know, all of that research was done together, he was upset that he even recommended doing it. And he told me he was upset that he was circumcised himself.
Yeah.
So eventually, he wanted to restore, and he decided he could possibly call and ask his mother, since she paid for the surgery to be done out of pocket, that maybe she would be able to help out financially because we were in a tough spot at the time. And she decided to tell him at that moment, no, I'm not going to pay for it. And if I could go back in time, I would circumcise you and any other boy that I could. And yeah, that was one of
Perfect.
the worst things she could have said.
Yeah, sure. It doesn't sound very motherly to me at all.
Mm, mm-mm.
And sad. Okay. So you said that you Googled it, so I'm assuming this has been within the past couple of decades because Google hasn't been out that long. Not to me? Did I lose you? Hello?
Okay, we cut out for a second.
Oh, okay. There you are.
It's probably my internet.
Oh, actually, it says my internet connection is unstable. That's weird. I usually don't have that much trouble, but my Wi-Fi is low though. That's weird. Okay, so yeah, so we were So I was asking. You said that you Googled it, so I'm assuming that means that this has been within the past couple of decades, at the very least.
Yes. Immediately when it popped up, the definition of it, like removing, no,
Yeah.
I'm not gonna remove anything. Like,
Well, you might want to remove extra hair or long fingernails, right? I mean,
hmm
but
that's one thing that doesn't make sense to me as why mothers are afraid of clipping their children's fingernails, but these
mm,
same mothers will deliberately,
I know.
sign up for a cert. That doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, yeah. I was my wife wouldn't clip my son's fingernails, and I I always wanted to do it. But yeah, it's kind of when they're little, they're tiny. It's like you want to be really careful about clipping those fingernails. But yeah, you're removing living tissue, right?
hmm
It's innervated,
something
and
that
that's where it's.
something that does not make sense to me at all. Tongue and lip ties, they are a physical, like midline defect
Mm-hmm.
indicator of a condition called methylene tetrahydrofolate reductase. Not a lot of people, yeah, it's a mouthful. Not a lot of people in the community of birth work, doctors even know about it,
Mm-hmm.
but it affects the body's ability to detox. There's a
Oh,
reduced ability to produce glutathione. And so many people whose children have tongue and lip ties and etc., they have problems breastfeeding.
Yeah.
So
My oldest son did.
yeah, you can get, my son too, you can get a lactation counselor who's hired by a hospital to walk in and be like, nothing's wrong. They're not even educated on ties. So they're not surgery happy about correcting ties when it's actually
Wow.
beneficial for breastfeeding.
Yeah.
But, they ask you 20, 30 times in a hospital.
Yeah. Let's put
My
penis.
first son.
Yeah.
Yeah, my first son was a home birth. And my second son was a hospital birth. And I got maybe asked 2 to 3 times, but that was way too much. It shouldn't be asked at all.
No, not at all. I don't. Yeah. Just like both of my sons were home birth. But yeah, my oldest son had a tongue tie. It was very severe. When he opened his mouth, it looked like his tongue looked like a fork, quite literally. The middle of his tongue was fully held back into his mouth, and he couldn't breastfeed. So we got it fixed basically the next day, and totally fixed the breastfeeding problem right away. So, and it was a really simple, quick little snip. It was, I think, 1 drop of blood. And you could see, it was pretty easy. You could see through the tie, the part that was holding the tongue back. It wasn't like there was, blood veins going through it, or, it was clear. So it's nothing like the skin of genitalia. And we were primarily talking here about male preputial amputations, but female genital cutting also happens in the world, including the U.S. And it's pretty clear. It's not just this vestigial, useless piece of skin that's being removed. So
there's actually a woman in my state that endured forced genital cutting. I live in Kentucky, and her parents were actually Christians.
Yeah.
And that didn't make any sense. She said that her story didn't make any sense, but her family was very abusive and just did it as a way to abuse her. Like they deliberately only did it for that reason, according to her.
Wow. Gosh, I can't imagine parents like that. It just blows my mind. But yeah, I mean, female genital circumcision used to be a legal thing up till the later 90s. So
I actually heard like it was illegal until a certain point, and then it went against a certain amendment in the Constitution that either they had to say that circumcision of males was illegal, or condone both of them.
Yeah.
And they decided to condone both of them. And
equal protection laws. Even states have their own equal protection laws, and myself and John. Gosh, I want to blank on his name right now, but 2 of us went to Washington State's Capitol when they were proposing an anti-FGM law. This was shortly after the federal anti-FGM law was considered non-constitutional, so the state reacted and that they should have their own, and they basically just copied and pasted from another state the laws that another state has passed, and we both went in there and said, well, that's inconsistent, because you can't really protect one without protecting the other, because of the laws about equal protection of groups. You can't protect one group without protecting the other. It's the same thing. And I also dug in and said, well, how do you draw the line between this sort of genitalia versus that sort of genitalia? Especially when you start looking at intersex, you've got this whole spectrum of we're really born with the same parts. It's just a matter of size and degree, slightly a little bit differently on the placement. But when you really look at it, it's the same stuff. So I
saw recently that a state banned intersex surgery, and everyone in the comments was very supportive, as they should be. But it's also so they can ban female or really criminalize it and intersex.
Yeah.
But not boys.
Yeah. It's very
I feel like they should all be banned at the same time.
Yeah. I'm part of multiple intersex groups that talk about this stuff, and it's really kind of surprising. I actually come across things that the intersex community has not. somehow I get notified about these things, whatever, and I share it to the groups. It's like, oh, we didn't know about this, whatever. So it's really interesting. Like California has been involved in some laws about intersex. So yeah, it's the whole genital autonomy spectrum is very interesting to follow. I could spend all day every day just trying to keep up with all the news and everything that happens worldwide, especially when it comes to FGM, because when you look on the internet, there's 100 times more articles and stuff about female genital cutting than there is male genital cutting. So there's always something being talked about. I have an alert set up with Google to get emails when certain words or letters come up when in the Google searches. So FGM is one of them. Circumcision is another, and there's a whole handful that I monitor for, and I get multiple emails. I pretty much get at least one email a day on FGM. Sometimes FGM is actually 3 letters for a company, but more often than not, it's about female genital mutilation. So, okay, so I was also talk about how normally I have this list of things to cover, and it's meant to speak with victims, meaning the victims that are actually cut. And you're not a victim of genital cutting yourself, but you're an indirect victim because your husband was cut, right?
Multiple partners. Yeah.
And so I'm going to just quickly go over the physical harms, and if there's anything that you want to speak to about any of those physical harms, please speak up. I would definitely like to hear your thoughts on it. So the first physical harm that I talk about is acropostion, which is the part that is just hanging past the glands when the penis is not erect, right? And supposedly, in the biblical times, that was all that was removed. So they didn't remove everything that covered the glands; they just removed a little bit off the end.
Oh yeah, that was the true priah, as they called it, I believe. Yeah, they just spoke of removing the tip. And American circumcision is way more. It's definitely not that. I do know that. I believe that was the words they used. True pariah.
I heard that was Brit. There was Brit milah, and then there was Brit priah, or priah, or whatever. And Brit priah is the part that removes everything off the glands. And the history of that was that the rabbis found out that some of the Jewish men were restoring. They were pulling to cover their glands because they did sports in the nude with the Greeks, Romans, or whatever. And in order to stop that, they decided, well, let's cut off more, so they don't do that.
Oh my goodness, I didn't know that history.
Yeah,
that's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's covered a little bit in the American Circumcision documentary. So, and I've talked to many men and women, and I've even looked at plenty of peni, and it seems to vary about how much men are cut, how much is actually removed, and there's really no way for a doctor to know how much to cut. They try to cut enough so there's nothing that's trying to reattach the glands, but you just don't know how much that the what do you call it, the corpus cavernosum, that's the part that fills up with blood inside the penis. Women have a corpus cavernosum as well. You don't know how much that's going to grow underneath the skin. I mean, all they're doing is cutting the skin, right? So, and when that corpus cavernosum fills up, well, it extends and goes out. So you don't know how big that corpus cavernosum is going to be on the inside. So Um, so men end up having different what we call coverage indexes, to try to determine how much glands coverage they have when they're not erect, when they're flaccid.
Mhm.
And then the next,
So
what's that?
So some of the partners that I've been with, some will have quite a bit of slack, as I've heard it referenced, and
Mhm.
others will not, and they will have painful erections. It varies greatly.
Yeah.
Um, but one of my partners did not have much slack, and I, of course, educated him on restoring, and he decided to not go with the machine, but do as what you were referencing with the Jewish people, like just covering the remaining foreskin over the head what he could, and he
Mhm.
claimed that he got more and more flat or more and more slack as he practiced that.
Yeah. It's called, I've heard it called cellular mitosis. It's just basically when you're stretching the skin, you're causing the cells to replicate and then spread out. It's not like when you're pregnant, your belly gets bigger and
Mhm.
the skin around your belly stretches out, and you end up quite often with stretch marks.
Mhm.
Some women are lucky and they don't have much for stretch marks, but yeah. So similar sort of thing. You don't get the nerves back. You don't get your ridge band back. Your frenulum isn't the same. Um, yeah, from what
Or
I've seen
lubrication
with
glands.
what's that?
Or lubrication glands, from what I've heard.
Yeah, I kind of wonder about that too because um, yeah, females have things, glands that create the lubrication. So you might not end up with the same amount of lubrication, but most guys I've talked to that have restored end up getting some lubrication back anyway, and their glands get soft and smooth and all that. But it's not the same. Like you also have the muscular part of the skin that makes it close tighter as it goes toward the tip of the penis.
Mhm.
So we
When
kind
one
of
of my
jumped ahead.
partners,
What's that?
when one of my partners started restoring,
Mhm.
they said like within that first week that things were a lot more sensitive and they were feeling more than they thought they ever could.
Yeah, exactly. I was talking with did another interview yesterday, and he said that his glands became more sensitive too. So
Mhm.
instead of having that keratinization and where the skin cells build up on the glands, and so the I guess whatever nerves are in the glands aren't exposed. So once that sloughs off, it's more exposed. So pretty interesting. I personally, I have not restored. I have too little to really work with, so I've kind
Mhm.
of avoided it. So that gets on to kind of jumped ahead a little bit on the list, but so the acroposia and then the sensitive skin, it seems pretty clear to everyone I've ever spoken with that that has done any amount of research on this is that you're removing sensitive skin. It's been proven both by the Bossio study and the Sorrells study that yes, this is sensitive skin. It is innervated. It is um, vascularized. So
Mhm.
it's not like you're cutting off something that is useless and just a flap of useless skin, or some people compare it sometimes to hair or fingernails or whatever. It's not the case,
Mhm.
right? It's not at least.
I've been told that women, this is just an estimation, of course, have around 8,000 nerve endings in their clitoris, and that foreskin contains 20,000 nerve endings. But in American sex ed, they will tell people that the penis only has 4,000 nerve endings. But in total, an intact penis would have around 24,000. And since this is American sex ed, they really don't really, want to talk about what's being removed in terms of sensitivity.
Yeah, I think they're too afraid of boys feeling bad about
Mhm.
their body and then going home and complaining to their parents and then having the parents call the school and complaining that, well, you're telling my kid this or whatever. Right? Um,
Oh,
I can
for
I
sure.
can see that.
But the one time that I did see this, it was a woman giving sex ed to an adult. So it was pretty
Yeah.
interesting. I'm thinking this one particular video, she had like this booth at, I don't know where it was, but it was apparently a place for her to do sex ed,
Mm-hmm.
and multiple adults are coming up and asking about information, I guess. And yeah, she said that the penis only had 4,000 nerve endings. And I'm like, I don't think that's, a bunch of
Yeah.
other intactivists jumped on there and they were like,
No, it's a lot
that is
more.
true to some degree, but
Yeah. I don't really get bogged down too much in exact numbers. The fact is, the inarguable fact is that it is innervated, and I don't care if it's only on her nerves. It's my nerves. It
Mhm,
should have been cut off, right?
mhm,
So, and I have two kids, two teenage boys, and I went to a meeting with my school district about their sex ed coverage, and I actually asked them a little bit. Well, what happens if a boy asks, why do I not have my prepubes or whatever, or my foreskin? They're like,
mhm,
oh, well, we all come in different sizes and shapes, and blah blah blah. Just totally skirting the issue.
mhm,
Like, okay. Hopefully, you don't get a kid that goes deeper and asks more questions or whatever. But
mhm.
yeah, unfortunately, that is what it is. And Gregory Malchuk, he suggests that we should go protest at little league ball games and stuff like that.
Oh my goodness. The
Yeah.
time that I did protest with Blood Stamen and their friends, a school bus was on that route.
Yeah.
I'm sure, a lot of them went home and talked to their parents that day.
Yeah. We've done protests at colleges, universities, and it makes some sense that, at least you've got people that go into school are typically going to learn something. So, hey, they got to get an opportunity to learn something else. Maybe it's not
Mhm,
necessarily from a professor, but at least they get something from the protesters, and then go in and ask the professors more questions or whatever, challenge
mhm,
them. So, and I feel the same way when it comes to protesting in front of hospitals. Some say that hospitals are kind of hardened targets. Well, I'm not aiming for the hospitals. I'm aiming for the people that are going into the hospitals.
mhm,
So, at least those people going into the hospitals can ask more questions to get more clarity about whether they should or shouldn't.
mhm.
So,
Oh, I have an experience. So my son was maybe 6 months old, and I took him to a supposed intact friendly pediatrician. He was supposed to be, natural minded. And, he lays my son down and he takes his diaper off, and I'm watching him really closely. But for a split second, my husband says something to get my attention. And in that few seconds, he had grabbed my son's penis and like retracted all the way back. And like before he even retracted, I yelled at him, like, no, 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 and he
mhm.
just completely ignored me while looking me in the face. And I explained to him why you don't do that. I was like, it's adhered to the glands. It's supposed to be,
Yeah.
fused until puberty. And I was like, you don't retract. He said, I didn't retract. I just pulled it back like this. And he did it again and ignored me as I yelled at him
Dude.
even more to stop. And then I was just like shaking. I was tearing up. Like, of course, we did not go back. Um, and nurses came in the room like in a hurry, and I couldn't even find the words to say. I was just so shaken up. Like,
Did your child
yeah.
cry from that?
Surprisingly, no, he did not cry, but
Yeah.
he did cry the next few diaper changes. Like he was screaming with
Mm.
the next few diaper changes, and it was red. I don't know if maybe he was shocked in the moment from me
Yeah.
yelling, but yeah, those next few diaper changes, I was really worried, but thankfully he was okay as far as I know.
Okay. Yeah, you really don't know for sure until later
Puberty.
on when they're supposed to start, when the inner mucosa is supposed to start breaking down and separating. And if the child is forcefully retracted and you get these micro tears of the glands, and then scar tissue is built up, then it might be scar tissue between the glands and the inner mucosa, then it never wants to separate,
Hmm.
right? So,
Yeah, the Bolano preputial lamina membrane.
Exactly.
I believe that's what it's called.
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah. Yeah, that's supposed to break down later on. And yeah, if you're forcefully retracting, then you're going to damage that and it's not going to heal properly.
My sister is a nurse and she tried telling me, like, I've tagged her in all of the works, like the videos of it being done, reasons why not do it. And she said that she was going to do it anyways because she's a nurse and necrosis. And I was like, necrosis happens way more often with circumcision. Like,
Wow.
I don't even think necrosis is a thing unless you have like a wound.
Did you connect her with the Doctors Opposing Circumcision site?
Yes, I connected her with them, Bloodstained Men, Saving Her Sons, Your Whole Baby, all of it.
Okay.
And her husband is in her ear, you know.
Yeah.
Like, he literally body shamed my child one time that I was over there. My toddler decided to just like take off his pull-up, and I was chasing him around trying to get him, you know, clothes again. And my sister's husband decided to say, you know, cover him back up. He doesn't have a normal penis.
Oh.
Like, as a joke or something. Like, why would
normal?
Yeah,
go travel the world a little bit. Yeah, go travel the world a little bit.
Of the world is intact, and he's like, I don't care. It's still not normal. And I'm just like, what? How do I even talk to? How do I even talk to you?
Doesn't sound like someone wants to listen. Okay. All right, so that was sensitive skin, and then glands protection. Even the AAP back in the 70s said, well, you know, prepuce is there to protect the glands. Then you have the rolling mechanism. You know what that's about, right?
The groin mechanism?
Rolling. You know,
no. Oh, rolling.
Yeah.
I was so like, groin mechanism. I'm
know,
sorry, I can't.
It's a dual layer, so it unrolls down the penis, and if you have some slack during sex, then that helps.
The rigid bands catch on to the bands or the ridges of the G spot, and it keeps the lubrication in, right? Yeah. Like with circumcised men, I've realized or noticed that it tends to shovel out like the vaginal fluid, and sex normally with circumcised men for me, depending on the slack, it will be like okay at first, and then it will turn painful and then numb.
Yeah,
like that's always been my experience. Yeah. Even with lube, that sort of experience. And for me, it seems to be that the men that have more slack, the less like rough or aggressive, like jackhammering, I guess you would call it, the less they do that. And there's more of, you know, just, I don't know the proper word. Rhythmic, I don't know. It's less in your face.
I understand. Yeah. I understand that too well, actually, unfortunately. So yeah, you know, every time, even with water-based lube, when the penis is pulled out, it's open to air and it's going to dry out. It's just, matter of fact, that's the way it is. And some guys say, well, you just got to get that woman more wet or whatever. It's like, oh my gosh, getting that WAP isn't always, perfectly easy for everyone. Just like, men sometimes have a hard time getting an erection. So we're built to, we're designed by nature to work together, and that includes man bringing some lubrication to the game and the rolling mechanism. So which gets into the next thing is the moisture lube. So yeah, when you have that coverage and all, you get lube, built-in lubrication.
This is a little unrelated, but so I was actually born with a double vagina, which is known as a septate vagina, vaginal septum. Women with my condition typically have 2 cervixes and 2 uteri.
Wow.
But I have realized that not only do they like to recommend needless surgery for men, babies. We like to push really unnecessary surgeries on women with the fear mongering. I was told, if you ever want to have children, we need to remove one of your uteruses and reshape it and put it back inside. Now, we found out that I only had one uterus and one cervix, but they still wanted to take one heart-shaped uterus. It wasn't even completely divided. And cut it open, put it back in, and she said, even if you do get pregnant, there's a risk of the sutures like bursting and you dying and the baby dying. I'm like, geez. Well, I'm only like 14, so like let's not even talk about this right now. Oh, and the first doctor who diagnosed me diagnosed it as a septate hymen, not even a septate vagina. Like the tissue is like literally one vagina divided in two. And the dude was so incompetent. I bet he performed circumcision. He was so incompetent that he didn't even know what a hymen was. So, I mean,
wow.
How smart are these people that are doing these things?
Well, when things are that, something like that is so rare, I'm not sure, it's like, I think, have you ever heard of Dr. Money?
I don't believe so, no.
And it's kind of funny that his name is Money, so we're talking about, dollars and cents money, but no, his real name was Dr. Money. And if you look at the history a little bit, Dr. Money was one of the guys that he suggested turning, was it Alex Hardy or some other guy? He turned a boy into a girl, and I think this boy was a twin. So one of the twins got a messed up butt.
His penis was burned off, right?
Yeah, I think that was the case. So they turned him into a girl, and then he later on committed suicide.
I believe his name was David. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Oh, gosh. Yeah, blanking on his name right now. But anyways, Dr. Money was the popular doctor involved with that, and that same doctor is also heavily involved in the intersex surgeries.
Oh my goodness. He was like, I believe I read that he was really trying to push him towards liking feminine things with his therapy.
Yeah.
It was abuse.
Yeah. So yeah, they've learned so much more, about all that stuff since then. So I don't know. I do question when they try to modify children's genitalia just to match the binary male or female standard that a lot of people are used to seeing, when there's like 1 in 1,000 or whatever that are born with some sort of variation. And they can live perfectly happy lives without having to be modified to look completely one way or the other.
Whenever I hear people talking about, oh, I want my son to match me, right? Well, it's like, if he gets a botched circumcision, are you going to go and get too?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You gonna plant hair on his chest so he looks like you? Yeah. Yeah. I don't get. I guess it's just male ego. I don't know. All right. So the other thing on the list of physical harms is the frenulum, and there's varying degrees of damage to the frenulum depending on the kind of cut that the male gets.
I've been with men who have the frenulum still intact, and some men where it's been completely like scraped off. Wow. I have been told of a toothbrush test where you can apply a toothbrush to the frenulum or the penis head, and then you can apply the toothbrush to your scar, and apparently you will feel more in the scar than the penis head.
Oh, yeah. 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 It's depending on the kinds of nerves you're talking about, whether the light touch nerves or the deep nerves. But yeah.
And of course, depending on how much is left of the frenulum.
Yeah. Yeah. For me, I believe I was cut with Mogen Clamp. So I still have like all or most of my inner mucosa. So that means for the most part all my perineum is there, at least the fat part, not the part that would pull up on the skin to pull up the foreskin, the prepuce back up over the head. But yeah, I still have a good bit of sensitivity right there underneath the head.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I've seen plenty of guys that were probably cut with either a Gomco clamp or a Plastibell, because you can see that they have very little intermucosa left right underneath the head,
Mm-hmm.
and the rest is all shaft skin. So that totally changes the dynamics of what they're going to feel.
Mm-hmm.
And that would probably lead to why they feel the need to jackhammer to get to climax.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that does make sense.
And we talked about ridge band, how the ridge band is typically the part where it's kind of like your lips, it's where the intermucosal mates up with the shaft skin. And it's also the part where things kind of tighten up past the glands, and kind of, especially for young children, it kind of creates a sphincter, so urine and stuff can get out, but nothing can get in.
Mm-hmm. So it prevents infections. So
Yeah.
people should stop saying that foreskin causes infections, but prevents them, because that's the truth.
Yeah, exactly. Hairy shaft / scrotal webbing. Scrotal webbing is the medical terminology, but when a man doesn't have his prepuce to roll down the shaft when he gets an erection, what's going to happen instead is that he's going to have to, skin's going to be pulled from other parts of his body. Like on the underside, it's going to pull up on the scrotum, and on the top side, it's going to pull up on the pelvic floor. So do you think that the men that you've been with have had troubles like that?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like most of the circumcised men that I've been with have had the scrotal hair pulled up on the shaft.
Mm-hmm.
And as being an intactivist, I have one friend who has 5 sons that she cut, and then she had a daughter, and then she had another boy, but her last baby was not cut.
Mm-hmm.
And through these experiences, I've learned, one of her children had to have another surgery apparently to fix the botched one, even after she learned the truth about it. So she really, she beat herself up over it.
Yeah.
That's one thing I'm not entirely sure about, if the foreskin is readhering to the head with the membrane, like trying to fix itself.
Mm-hmm.
And something is wrong, and it keeps getting ripped and bleeding and whatnot. Do you have to have another surgery, or can you just find a way around it?
Yeah, that's a tough one. After the damage is done, I mean, it might be best to keep it from doing what's skin bridges,
Mm-hmm.
where the intermucosa is trying to reattach to the gland, because that's the way it's supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've talked with like one guy. No, you have to like stick a Q-tip in between underneath the skin bridge to clean it out every once in a while. It was horrible.
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah, he stuck with that unless he wants to go get some more cutting done.
Mm-hmm. And then if you've got a botched one where you can't even tell where it's done, in those situations I'd probably, like probably don't get it redone this time, if there's no bleeding and whatnot, and no pain. But yeah, that was her experience. She at least saved one of her boys, and she's very, very proud of herself for at least,
Yeah, for learning and doing better. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It takes a lot. That's why I love Regret Mothers for the cause. They have the selflessness to know what they've done is wrong, and want to do better and stop it from happening to other children. It takes a really big woman with a really big heart to do so, because you'll see how some of these people react. They'll drive by with a pair of scissors while you're
Yeah.
protesting against it. Or in
Yeah.
my case, the protest that I went to, people literally went into the dollar store, got some poster board and Sharpie, and
Hmm.
wrote counter protests,
Yep.
and no one could even read their sign, so it looked like they were for our cause.
Yeah, exactly. I kind of laugh at people that do that. It's like, you're actually creating more attention for us. That's great. Thanks.
Yeah.
Go for it. More people are welcome because they see you. That's great.
Like, we were even yelled at by a woman. No one could even tell what she was saying, but
Yeah.
it was like, why are you yelling? And then she held up a pair of scissors, and it's just like, this is what you're doing with your time.
Yeah.
You
Yeah. There's one video out there with Brother K interviewing this one lady that comes along with some, shears.
Oh my God.
Big shears.
What is going through their head? Like,
Yeah.
I will show you.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
I actually had a friend who went off on me. Well, I don't even consider them a friend, but they went off on me, a Facebook friend, who was really against me being so cut and dry to the point, because I don't sugarcoat it. Like, I will call it abuse, I'll call it mutilation,
Yeah.
and that apparently I'm not nice. But then I hit them with the, words are apparently more harmful than actually strapping someone down against their will and risking their life to cut off the most sensitive part of their penis. I think I'm going to be honest about it.
Yeah.
Like, people will get triggered by the words cut and mutilate as if that's not what is happening.
Yeah.
But
I understand. I mean, I came from a position where I thought that I was better off myself. So I can get, I compare it to this. Like, if you tell someone, hey, jump 20 yards, you're going to say, I can't do that. Screw you, whatever. But if you lay out a path for them, take a step and a step and a step and a step, they might do that. And they might get to that, that 20 yards through several steps. So it's finding a way to get them to take those steps.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Stepping stones, like planting the seed.
Yeah. So if you would have called me mutilated 15 years ago, I probably would have said, "What? I'm not mutilated."
Yeah, you're crazy. Yeah. Like.
Yeah. But nowadays, it's like, I'm damn well mutilated. I'm not gonna argue with that.
I try to have a gentle tone. Of course, you catch more flies with honey. Yeah. I try to have a gentle tone, but on my personal Facebook, people know like how what my viewpoints are against it. And there was this one friend who like just went off on me, like, claiming that I was rude and whatnot, and sent her videos. She refused to listen to them, and then she decided to come back and apologize like a year later because of intersex laws. She just like, she needed that seed planted and saw like the reasoning behind it, because there's a lot of sad intersex stories. And then it just clicked for her that everyone deserves genital autonomy. Like, it's a basic right. But yeah, there's some like when people ask for information and some will just like jump down their throat and say, you're awful if you're even considering this. I'm like, that's not what you should say. But I totally get it.
And I feel like we need as many voices in this movement as possible. The whole range, because if you just approach people with a gentle voice, and those people don't hear or see the men that are angry with the strong voices, then they're not going to necessarily believe what you're saying. Right? So they kind of need to hear both, or hear the whole spectrum. Unfortunately, this should be an easy thing to tell people. It's like, okay, well, you're doing this. You're cutting off tissue that is sensitive and vital and has functions and everything, and that should be it. It should be done. But reality is we're dealing with cognitive dissonance. So we have to not just convince them of that stuff, but we have to convince them that men actually, or people, do complain about this cutting that goes on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Like there's I don't know if this page is still up, but there's a page like I am not thankful that just had a whole bunch of stories. I tagged the group circumcised men do complain, his body,
Mm-hmm.
his choice. I'm not thankful was the really big one for me because it had pictures of signs,
Mm-hmm.
people holding up, and I feel like that was really helping people be receptive because they saw the stories with the face.
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
I've got a whole set of pictures in the gallery on circumcisionresources.org that has a whole bunch of those pictures on it. I'm aiming to get those pictures to pop up more when you type in those things like I am not thankful or men do complain. When people do a Google search and just click on the photos or the images section of Google.
I believe someone told me recently that American Circumcision wasn't on Netflix anymore.
It's not. It was only for 16 months or 18 months, something like that. But that relieved Brendan Marotta, the guy that put the video together, to now he's free to get that on Hulu or other ones. But it's still on iTunes and Amazon. I think like Comcast and those companies probably still have it available as well. But Netflix had a little bit of a tie down on it. It's like, well, as long as it's with Netflix, you can't do some of these other things or something like that. So, yeah, it's still sad that it's not on Netflix. But yeah, a lot of people were abandoning Netflix anyways, and Disney Plus and HBO and all that.
That is true.
What's that?
That is true. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know how important that's going to continue to be. So we were talking about hairy shaft and scroll webbing. So since the scrotum is being drawn up, for me, and I haven't run into very many men that have said they have had the same problem, but I've seen this also in porn, where since the scrotum is getting pulled up, it's pulling up on the testes, and the testes, like the porn that I saw, the testes actually drew up on both sides of the penis. But for me, it wasn't just that drew up onto both sides of the penis, the shaft, but like one would draw all up inside of my body, and it would get so uncomfortable I would have to stop having sexual intercourse or whatever at that point until I could relax my erection a little bit. Not so much that I can't continue to have sex, but it had to unengorge a little bit, so my testy would come back out. Have any of your partners have that problem that you know of?
I do remember seeing like the scrotal webbing that you're speaking of. But I haven't really seen them like go up inside the body,
Okay. All right. And we talked a little bit about pelvic floor. So like the top of the penis, the skin would be so tight. So when the penis goes out from the erection, the skin would get tight on the top of the penis, and it would cause the penis to go upward instead of outward. So it would like reach up for the stomach.
Actually, I believe that's happened with like all of them that I can remember.
Right.
Yeah. One thing that reminds me of is a bunch of moms in these mom groups asking about buried penis. Like they say, oh, it just happened after circumcision. It wasn't like this before.
Yeah.
Is this normal? That happens a lot.
Yeah.
And then you'll see other moms in the comments like, yes, that's normal, but it wasn't like that before.
Yeah, so buried penis, you've got the fatty tissue down there. So it's like it appears like the penis isn't retracting or isn't going outside of the body very much. But the problem is that the penis might fall behind that fat and get stuck behind the fat instead of being able to come out. So they had to fix that so that urination would occur properly. But is circumcision causing that, or is it the other way around, or I don't know for sure, but yeah.
Oh, that's another thing that reminds me of. I've heard the saying that he couldn't pee properly, but if he couldn't pee properly with foreskin, then he wouldn't have been born because if a fetus cannot pee,
Yeah.
they would automatically, you know.
Yeah.
That's one excuse that I've seen a lot. Another would be that it does prevent infections. People would say, oh, he has something wrong with his kidneys, so this will just make it easier. No, if he has kidney problems and you have a circumcision done, he's still going to have kidney problems. It does not, it
Well,
doesn't.
so the thinking that I hear about this is that if the prepuce isn't allowing the urine to escape, then yeah, the bladder pushes the urine back up towards the kidney, and that causes kidney problems. But in order to address that, you don't necessarily have to do a full preputial amputation in order to allow the urine to come out, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you just cut a little bit, or reach in there and open it up or something, so it can escape. You stick sorry, I get a little wound up on this, but there's a lot of other options that does not require a full preputial amputation to address that issue. Now, the doctors might be lazy or whatever, and they already have the tools to throw on a clamp or throw on a bell, Plastibell or whatever, and cut it off, and
like a whole lot more work.
Problem solved. Rather than taking a little bit of extra time and cutting only what needs to be cut.
Mm-hmm. Another thing, phimosis. They love to throw out the term phimosis out there, but that's what's supposed to be happening when they're a baby. It's supposed to be fused. It's not supposed to
you can't
go
diagnose
anywhere.
phimosis on a baby or even
And
a young child.
Alex Hardy, like he got the diagnosis of phimosis, he should have been able to do steroidal creams, and have support. There's so many more options out there that are way less invasive than a full preputial amputation.
Yeah, I chatted with one guy who his preputial lamina, I think I said that right, wasn't even separating until he was in his early 20s.
Mm-hmm. That's completely normal.
Yeah, it's
like
okay.
Some children, it can happen as young as 2 years, and it can happen as late as early 20s.
Yeah. So, yeah. Phony phimosis is what they call it. Okay, so that was part 4. Myelostenosis. You know what that is, right?
I'm sorry, what?
Myelostenosis?
No, I can't say I've heard of that before.
Okay. So I had this when I was a child. Didn't realize it was because of circumcision until I think that was even in my 40s by the time I figured it out. And someone explained to me what it was and everything. So then I made the connection, like, oh, wait a second. When I was like 7 or 8 years old, I went to the hospital because I had this problem with, when I urinated, I sprayed everywhere. And the doctor identified that I had a little bridge, a little skin bridge across my my meatus, area where the urine comes out. And he had to go in there with a little scalpel and just cut it real quick. It was painless, and I don't remember having any problems from having it done. He didn't put me under, it was, I guess there were no nerves and no little skin bridge, but he cut it, and then I started urinating, without spraying all over the place. But from what I've heard, there are guys that have much worse myelostenosis issues than I had. And myelostenosis, pretty much 100% is something that only preputial amputees or circumcised males get. It usually happens during childhood. But myelostenosis is also just the narrowing of the urinary tract. And I've seen pictures of an intact meatus next to a previously amputated penis, and the hole is definitely bigger for the intact And
Mhm.
so you know, I personally have a little bit of sharpness when I urinate right there at the end. And after I look at that picture, it's like, I bet if I was still intact and I didn't have the narrower clothing, I probably wouldn't have that sharp feeling right at the end. It'll be a little bit more
Mhm.
comfortable. But it's not so bad that I'm going to go in and have them filled out more or anything like that.
Mhm.
So, any of the guys that you've been with, do you know if they've had any of that?
Um, yes, with the metal stenosis, I do remember one partner who like sprayed a whole lot whenever he would urinate, so he just ended up sitting down most of the time.
Oh,
Um, and with my intact children, well, my one that is potty trained, he has pretty good control, so he doesn't like pee all over the bathroom floor.
okay. Excuse me, man. Uh, yeah, I think it happens a lot more often than um, is advertised, and or that even men really realize that happened. And the doctor didn't say anything about it having anything to do with the fact that I was circumcised.
Hmm.
That I remember. I have a pretty clear memory of going to the doctor and all this. So he talked to my grandmother and I do the whole thing. The next thing is skin bridges. So we were talking about, a little bit about that, how the inner mucosa tries to reattach to the glands shortly after the procedure's been done. Did any of your partners have skin bridges?
I do believe seeing skin bridges once,
Mhm.
and one of my partners not only was circumcised, but the glands was cut. Like it had
Oh
a
yeah.
pretty big line right across it.
Do you think it was cut or was it clamped? Because like the Mogen clamp is well known, and they were sued out of existence for it because if the actor, the person that's doing the cutting, isn't careful, they can clamp the glands instead of clamping only the skin past the glands.
You said Mogen Clamp doesn't leave frenulum, really, does it?
No, no, well, they all the clamps will leave a certain amount of frenulum. So I've heard of cases where they would freehand the frenulum out, but for the most part,
So that's how
a
it would
certain amount of
happen.
frenulum is there. The Gomco clamp and the Plastibell are both bell methods, right? So they stick a bell on the glands that goes just past the glands a little bit, and then they cut just below the glands, which
Mhm.
ends up leaving just a little bit of inner mucosa left
Just
over.
hearing it makes me nauseous.
Yeah, I hear
Uh,
you. Whereas
so,
the Mogen clamp and the Jewish barzel, what they do instead is they pull the skin past the glands and then they clamp it at the end of the glands. So that ends up leaving the inner mucosa intact, but they end up cutting off more shaft skin,
mhm.
right? So, um, but yeah, again, if you put that Mogen clamp on in the wrong too low, and you're dealing with a tiny little infant penis, you can easily clamp the glands, and it's a well-known, documented um, case with the Mogen clamp that they got sued because this would happen too often. And what's really really crazy is that this has been happening over in Africa, where they started doing circumcisions to try to address the HIV issue. They had been using the Mogen clamp, which is just nuts because company was sued out of existence because of the incidence of these
Mhm.
damages. But they were doing it, and I guess they recently decided to stop doing that. So,
This particular person, they did have that, line, which, as you describe it, like with your what's the word?
this
Demonstrative object. Um,
my mock penis.
yes. Um, it seems to be like around the area where it would have, caught a clamp, but he did also not have like any frenulum remaining, really.
They must
So
have
they must
free-handed
have
some of it.
free-handed it.
Yeah. Oh man. I've heard of guys, even John Geisker, when he did a presentation that is on my YouTube channel. He talked about how if guys get their frenulum cut out, they're like impotent, functionally impotent. So I've heard of guys that say, "Yeah, I was cut so bad I don't even bother having sex."
I believe that it is like a male G spot, and like the G spot of
Oh
the
yeah,
anus would more so be like a P spot,
yeah,
because women have their P spot and men should too, and women also have the ability to feel pleasure in their anus, right? So for them to say that men only have one G spot, I think is also very ignorant, a way that they push the agenda, because when you try to bring up that fact, immediately people are like, no, it's up the butt. And you're
yeah,
like, but that's a
yeah,
different thing.
yeah, yeah,
Because men can just touch the frenulum and orgasm that way,
yeah.
you know.
Glenn Callender from Canada FAP, CanFAP, Foreskin Awareness Program, or something like that,
Oh
or
my God.
project. Yeah, he was on the American Circumcision documentary, but yeah, he talked about the frenulum and how just flicking it would, could get him to orgasm. And I I never thought of it before I started going, learning about this stuff myself. But yeah, it is a very sensitive spot on me.
Mhm.
Um,
I mean, I've been with men who were able to do that after like I told them about it and they were circumcised, and then they were like, well, how come I didn't know about this like my whole life?
no one talks about it.
Yeah, even circumcised men, if they have enough frenulum, they can have that happen.
Yeah, yeah. So as you probably know, we're males and females are born with the same parts, just different sizes and slightly different positions.
Hmm.
Um, so your corpus cavernosa is a little bit smaller, and your glans is definitely smaller, right? You have a clitoral glands, and from what I often hear, women can get to orgasm just by flicking the clitoris.
Hmm.
They're by the clitoral glands. Well, guess what? That's same area as where the frenulum is on the male penis.
Hmm.
So we're talking about the same area, just
Yeah, it's just slightly different.
yeah, yeah. So it's not surprising to me at all. Okay, so that covered skin bridges. Erectile dysfunction. Um, did any of your partners have trouble with erectile dysfunction?
Yes.
Yeah.
The one that had the clamp issue,
Mhm.
apparently with the sliced glands, yes.
Yeah.
There were instances of that, which, he seemed pretty embarrassed by.
Yeah.
Like he didn't even understand why, because sometimes it wouldn't happen, but sometimes it would, just for like no reason whatsoever that, he knew of before finding out about
Yeah.
CERT.
Yeah. They say the brain is the biggest sexual organ, right? So
Hmm.
there's theoretically two possible sources for erectile dysfunction. One is a physical problem, and another is you're psychologically not there or not able to get excited or whatever for whatever reason. And if you're psychologically thinking about how you're missing something down there, things aren't doing so well down there, anything psychological, then yeah, you're
Hmm.
it's not going to be surprising that you have erectile dysfunction. Any other botches with your partners? Any general botches? You,
Um,
you did cover the part about where we think that the Mogen clamp was probably used and it clamped the glands. Anything else?
yeah, not that I can really think of.
Okay.
Mhm. Oh, wait, there was one person that I was with that um it looked like it was cut way too tight. Like it looked irritated when he was aroused, honestly. Like
Oh,
discoloration. Like discoloration is normal for circumcised men, but
Mhm.
his wasn't like any that I had seen in like porn or with my other partners, and it looked painful. Like the way that it was shaped, and like you could visibly see tension.
Was the penis being curved at all because the skin was too tight?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's a very common other
And
scenario.
the scar was pretty bad. Like it
Yeah,
was thicker than what I had seen in
more
terms of
scar
other.
tissue.
Yeah, it was more so like a hypertrophic scar.
Mm, wow. Yeah, scar tissue doesn't exactly have a lot of nerves in it.
Hmm.
Oh man. Oh, I hate hearing these stories, but we have to get them out there so other people know
Hmm.
this stuff happens, and it happens way too often.
I just linked someone to a story today from a bloodstained men protest where the man started crying because he was lied to by doctors and he got a circumcision done and he lost all sensation in his penis from it.
Yeah,
He was
I've
crying.
yeah yeah I've seen some stories like that. Yeah, not often that you'll see a man cry.
Mm-mm.
Okay, so the next major section of this is about partners, sexual relationships. I'm assuming from what you've been telling me so far that you're heterosexual. You haven't. Well, I don't know. You'd be heterosexual and do anal, I guess. But homosexual docking is probably not something you um, didn't talk about.
Wait, what do you mean homosexual docking?
Oh, you don't know what homosexual docking is?
Is that anal?
No, no. So take two men that are, and they're, I mean, there's going to happen multiple ways. But if you take two men that are intact, right, and they put themselves into each other's foreskin.
I did not know that was a thing. I'm learning
Yeah, it's called
something new.
docking. Jim Jeffries actually talked about it in one of his episodes.
Okay,
This
no.
the
I
same
did
Jim
not
Jeffrey
know.
that went and tried to shame Anal and Sabroni. You know who Anal and Sabroni is?
I've seen his name.
He's the kind of like the solo intactivist in Israel. He often goes out and protests in bloodstained pants by himself.
Hmm.
Yeah, he's had other people join him from time to time, but quite often, a lot of the videos I see, he's by himself. And I mean, that's one brave man to do it in Israel. But he goes out usually with mace and sometimes a gun or whatever to protect himself. And he
Hmm.
quite often has police nearby when he protests. But yeah,
Hmm.
Jim Jeffries went and did a little piece on him, and I guess Jim cut his own son, and he said that he did it because he loves his son, et cetera, et cetera. So I actually went and protested at a couple of Jim Jeffries shows. I mean, not inside the show, but just outside of the venue.
Hmm.
So, so yeah, that's homosexual docking. So, but what the aim here with this section is about how partners are affected by um, by genital cutting.
There were a few times where um my partner like I just really like you said it's mental. Um there was some emotional abuse, so
Mhm.
there were times where it was hard for me to mentally get into the situation and um he would orgasm once and then it would be over and like 99% of the time I would not orgasm and he would tell me that my orgasm didn't matter. And so I have spoken to many women on this topic and most of them like have 0 to 1 men one men
Yeah,
that can make them orgasm.
yeah,
Like it's so rare for an American woman to have a vaginal orgasm or like any orgasm at all, even by
yeah.
rubbing herself. And it's just kind of like sad. It is sad. It's just we are disempowering the men, and then the women literally go to other women asking like, what's going on, why can't I orgasm? And it's because, you know, it's not happening as it should be.
Yeah.
And I have been with circumcised men that had more slack that could make me orgasm like multiple times in intercourse, and I've been
Yeah.
with an intact person, which I did, but I haven't been with multiple intact people, so I can't say like that's a
Yeah.
for sure thing. But most of the times that I was with circumcised men, I could not orgasm.
Yeah. And you said you were talking also earlier about the jackhammering,
Hmm.
so they could get off. Um,
Yes, which was very painful for me. Like, um, I guess in some, like, it's ironic how in some situations with circumcised men, it was painful, but in others with circumcised men, it was not painful.
yeah,
It makes me wonder if it was due to slack. Maybe it was a mental thing.
they
I'm
could have
not
been.
sure. But I
Um,
don't remember all encounters being painful, just only some of them.
I've often heard people rave about Latin lovers or French lovers. It's like, hmm, Latin lovers are not circumcised. French
Mhm.
lovers are not circumcised. Where's there any correlation?
Why, yeah,
Hello.
why does America American women just freak out over, foreign men with their accents, right? And then they come over here and they immediately want to sleep with them. But these same women will like shame them. Like my past partner was Australian, and um they don't really do that over there. Like you would have to go to someone private in Sydney
Yeah, yeah, they
to.
don't allow it in the public hospital, from what I understand.
Mm. Yet he told me they don't really do it over there, but they still have groups where they like shame
Hmm.
intact men, which doesn't make any sense because it's like
Yeah,
so rare. So I mean, what?
yeah, exactly. What?
My Australian boyfriend, when he was erect, like if you would have placed him aside a circumcised man, I wouldn't have been able to tell a difference because it
Hmm.
was all pulled back.
Yeah.
Now, like there was a difference in color and there
Hmm.
wasn't a scar, but like there was nothing extra. And even if it was, like if I did get with an intact man and he had skin remaining over his glands, even when he was erect, like that would be an even bigger bonus because apparently that gives more gliding action, you
Hmm.
know?
Yep.
But most of the time there's like no extra. I wouldn't say there's even extra if there were,
Yeah.
remaining skin.
Yeah. I often see circumcised men get defensive and say, "Well, if I had any more, sensitivity, I would lose it more, more quicker, and that's not good. It won't last longer." I don't like
That's a
that way.
problem from CERT. From what I've heard, I've heard
Yeah.
that that's like caused by CERT, premature ejaculation,
Yeah.
as well as not being able to climax. It's like that's another, like it can range so much.
Yeah. Yeah. So when it comes down to it, regardless of what's true or not, it should be left up to the individual to figure it out for themselves. And
Hmm.
if a guy wants to get cut, he can draw his own dotted lines. And if he's not happy with what comes out of the end of it, oh, that's on him, not on a parent or someone else.
People, I for a period of time, this profoundly thing was really popular on Facebook, and someone anonymous decided to tell me that my son would not circumcising him. And I was like, would I rather my son hate me for, I don't know, taking away his ability to, experience his whole body, or would I rather him, you know, hate me for protecting his rights?
Yeah.
I mean,
What you're doing,
uh,
you're taking away a choice.
I don't think I understand your argument here, dude.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and of
But,
course, they decide to say those things whenever they're on anonymous, like these people that are claiming to be my Facebook friends. They're
mhm.
gonna wait until there's something to hide their name to tell me that my child's going to hate me for protecting him. One thing that I've seen recently, like a lot more recently, is doctors congratulating parents on how big their kid's penis is.
Gosh, I think Brother K put one out just today or something about that. That's disgusting.
Like that is one of the most disgusting things. Could you imagine if a doctor commented on a girl's, vulva? Like,
yeah,
I can't. I'm not even gonna say.
It's such
like,
a pretty
it
vulva.
just, yeah, like, oh, the boys will go wild when she's older. Like, this is. You're finding society really trying to push pedophilia a lot lately, and it. Have you heard of nurses like reporting that doctors get erections during doing like
I've heard about
circumcision?
that. I've heard of that.
I feel like it's just such a big problem in our society, and probably the people that are performing these surgeries really, really need to be looked at.
Yeah, I'd really be interested to see statistics on pedophilia in the U.S. compared to pedophilia in non-kidding cultures. It'd be really interesting to see. And when you think about it too, the cultures that do underage brides, child brides, those are typically MGM cultures.
I didn't have that correlation, but you're right. Yeah.
Right? Yeah. There's so many correlations that it's like, oh, wow. You like, wow, this is an interesting correlation.
Oh. I mean, oh my goodness.
Never thought of that before. Huh?
No, it's like a wall of bricks just to the face. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
They do say that it affects like the certain parts of the brain associated with pain and reasoning and whatnot. I forget who made that study.
We shouldn't have to study this, but I mean, if genital cutting was never ever invented, never ever thought of, whatever, we wouldn't be here doing this right now, and none of these studies to determine whether cutting off part of the genitalia to reduce HIV or any STD would have never even come up, right?
Oh my goodness.
I mean, could you imagine a completely different history timeline if no one would have ever suggested it?
We'd probably have world peace.
Maybe.
I like to tell people all of the world is watching America like America watched Tiger King.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Especially with all our recent events. This being the beginning of 2021, and Trump is out of office, and the attack on the White House and all that good stuff. Yeah. All right. So, unless you have anything else about how it affects sexual relationships, partnership-wise, physically, we can move on to psychological aspects.
There was a friend who saw all my posts, and a lot of my friends, I was even told at one point, like, why are you posting it to your Facebook? Like it's the same audience, but I had like over 1,000 followers, so my post would get shared and shared and shared. And I had one friend, she was very knowledgeable about my stance, but she finally did get with an intact man. Like before, she was in my inbox asking me like tips on how to orgasm because she couldn't. And then she did get with an intact man and was finally able to orgasm. So now she understands what I was, talking about in terms of gliding action and whatnot.
Interesting. I'd like to interview that person.
I'll let her know.
Yeah, that'd be interesting to hear. I actually interviewed someone earlier that has been with both, but that was a fun interview. I'll be posting that one up to YouTube tonight too. Okay, so anything else on the partnership part?
No, not that I can think of, but
All right, so psychological. The first part of psychological is the trauma from the cut itself. Um, we, all that we know about the trauma from the cut, from a medical standpoint, the studies, supposedly they've done some, they did like an MRI where they looked at the brain waves before and after, and how the brain waves were definitely changed from the cut and all that. But and
They
there's
used an obsidian blade, I believe, and in one
yeah,
of these, they did an MRI before and after, and I believe they got fussed at, and they
yeah,
had to stop it
yeah,
because that's unethical. Which that I mean,
yeah.
apparently, having an MRI while you're doing it is unethical, but doing it in general without an MRI is completely okay, guys.
Yeah. The there, I know some people, including myself, that have had dreams that seem to be connected to getting cut. For myself, I had dreams for the longest time. I think all the way up into my 20s, where I felt like I was paralyzed, and something was about to be done horrible to me. I no faces involved. I didn't know exactly what was going to happen to me, but I always wake up before it would happen to me.
You say that, and I just got goosebumps. One of my love interests, he told me that like same exact story.
Really?
But he could see people about to circumcise him.
Oh yeah.
And he tried telling people, and they gaslit him. They told
Yeah,
him
exactly.
he was crazy, and he hid it from his mom because he didn't want to hurt his mom.
This guy Jay Jackson, he talks about his dreams that he had, and he explained why. He was very clear about why he believed that his dreams were definitely because from getting cut as a baby.
Mhm.
And there's another person that there's a couple of guys I've heard of that talked about having memories from the procedure that, and they're vivid enough, with enough vivid clarity that they were able to identify that it was from the time that they got cut.
Mhm.
So, yeah. So, do you have any other thoughts on the trauma from the cut itself?
Not only is there the trauma from the cut, but there's the trauma from whenever you find out about the cut, you
Yeah,
possibly
that's the next item is trauma from the discoveries of the loss or the harm.
yeah, you get that trauma, and then it greatly affects everything. And perhaps you confront your mother or your parents
Mm-hmm.
about it, and their reactions just like salt in the wound. And
Yeah, yeah.
um,
They don't show any sympathy or empathy. Yeah,
or they laugh at you. In
yeah,
my
or
uncle's case,
gaslight you. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, like
Luckily,
literally laughing.
I didn't have that problem with my parents. My father got a little bit defensive, but it's like I'm not here to attack. This was I was cut a long time ago. This was back when they didn't have. Yeah, there was nothing in the libraries for them to go learn about what gets done. So
Mhm. Yeah, I think the age of information is really causing the end of it because
yeah,
you don't
I
have
hope
to
so.
like search for books about it. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
these are our voices, hear us, like our experiences as victims, as mothers being bombarded to do it, like just
Yeah,
listen.
yeah,
And people really want to protect human rights.
yeah. I just wish it
Um,
could happen faster. I mean, if I had $1 million, I'd be buying up all the
all the billboards, all the
boards that I could.
commercials.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Doing YouTube ads or Facebook ads or whatever to spread the word faster because all that we have is people sharing. So it's only through sometimes things will go viral, and that
Mhm.
wakes some people up.
One thing that really grinds my gears is the feminists who have my body, my choice on their profile,
Yeah.
and yet they'll be pro circ.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's mind-boggling. And I have talked to women on posts before who have literally said that they dislike so much, like men so much, that men can just deal with it.
Yeah.
And there's no words.
No.
Like, I can't
Very
wrap
sad.
my mind around someone using their hatred for men to
Yeah.
hurt their own children. Like, do they just despise their own children because they're boys? Like, that itself too.
Yeah. That's very harsh.
It's ridiculous. And I've seen it on multiple occasions actually, but just one is sticking out in my mind because this woman was adamant and she was a feminist, which I apparently there's two definitions of feminists. Like, one is very, very pro women, like women matter more than men, and
Mhm.
then there's the other where equality,
Yeah. Okay.
So I refrain from calling myself a feminist lately because I believe in equality. So I call myself pro human rights.
Yeah. Have you watched The Red Pill yet?
The red pill?
Yeah.
No, but I need to. Like, I'm all about the red pill.
Yeah.
I need to watch this.
Yeah. I mean, it was put together by a lady that was, very much a feminist, and she stopped calling herself a feminist after creating the documentary.
Mhm.
So,
I call myself an empathy advocate
hmm,
because that's all it takes is some empathy, like
yeah.
or sympathy,
Mhm.
but try to have empathy,
Yeah.
try to put yourself in someone else's shoes because I know if I had my genitals altered, I would not be able to forgive my parents, at least for a while. And especially if they reacted, in a way to gaslight me.
Yeah. All right. So, when we talk about the trauma from the discoveries of the loss slash harming, you talked about your husband who started learning about the harm, and and it sounded like he went through a bit of a story that he had to go through some grief and everything about
Mhm.
the harm that was done to him, and then he
Yeah,
also
I
tried to do
remember it pretty
restoration.
vividly. Um, I remember it pretty vividly. I was at a storage shed outside, and he had decided to call her and ask for her to pay for him to restore.
Mhm.
And she had told him essentially that she would do it to him and any other
Yeah,
boy that she could. Um, and that it was her choice and that she stands by it because she didn't do anything wrong and yeah, he should just deal with it. And
yeah. So
um
leading up to that point, though, he was figuring out how he was harmed before he decided to do restoration. Do you
mhm.
have memories of that?
um not quite like
Did he talk about it much?
no, he didn't talk about it too much, but he did seem pretty remorseful after, we listened to the video and
Mm-hmm.
researched the functions. And I
Yeah.
could tell that he was pretty upset about it. And he was like, yeah, we're not doing that to the baby.
Do you think he was an introvert?
Mm, quite a bit.
Yeah.
At the same time, he was extroverted too in
Oh,
some
okay.
ways, but he really liked being at home. He would game with his friends. He didn't have like a whole bunch of friends.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say he was more on the introverted side, yeah.
Okay. Now, I'm introverted myself. You can't tell from me doing these interviews, but um, it means that I
Oh,
process things internally. I don't process things while talking, so much by talking to people to try to figure things out.
there was an instant. So he did start talking to people about it, and some of his friends would come over to play Battlefield with him.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the friends was intact, and I could feel like a little bit of like resentment.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, we were talking about it, and I could just like see the look on his face whenever he found out that his friend was intact.
Yeah.
And was like, yeah, don't do that. The friend said, yeah, don't do that to the baby. Which was like, yes, I got some outward support because I didn't really have anyone in real life
That's good.
um that was really close that was against it because I'm like in the Bible Belt where
Mm-hmm.
they believe the lies spread about Christianity and
Yeah.
you know, it purifying the soul whenever Jesus
Yeah.
is supposed to be the last blood sacrifice, you
Mhm.
know. He protects children and he should be the forgiveness of all sins. Um, so it was pretty common around here, and my family was pro circ.
Yeah.
So it
I,
was good to
I
have that outside
I don't
voice. Like,
imagine your husband had any chats with the intact guy about how things work differently or anything like that.
if he did, I wasn't there.
You know, you weren't included in all that. Yeah. For
No.
me, it's been going on for over 15 years now. I didn't start studying this topic until my first son was born, um, and I was I read enough where it's like, okay, well, this doesn't make sense. Why would we cut this off just for these reasons? You know, it's like then you're gonna if you're gonna justify that, then you can justify cutting off lots of body parts. So I
Mhm.
didn't understand what I was missing at that point. I didn't understand the value of the male prepuce, but I understood enough to, question it enough to say, well, we just let him decide for himself, or we can do it later or whatever. And
Mhm. Yeah,
and
it can always be done later on, but it can't be undone.
yeah,
So
not really.
you're not doing any harm by waiting to research this
Yeah.
topic.
And for me, I didn't learn all these harms. Like we just went through all that list of harms. I didn't learn them all at once. I learned a little bit about this, and I learned about that, and I learned that I don't remember exactly which order I learned them in, but it's like I learned about the moisture and lube. It's like, what the heck? And then then I kind of go back into my brain and process it for a while, and when I look back, I feel like I went through the grieving process, the 5 steps of the grieving process. Starting off with
Mhm.
denial and bargaining and all that until I got through acceptance. And when I get through acceptance, then I start looking at it more, and then I learn about another thing. It's like, oh, well, there's, my testes were getting pulled up. And that was because I didn't have my prepuce to unroll down my penis. Instead, it's getting pulled up when I get an erection. And that's another problem with the fact that I'm circumcised. And then I go through the process again. And it took me about a dozen years before I, you know, figured this out. And I even started, figured out some more things even after a dozen years. But after a dozen years, I finally decided, what, I got to speak out about this. And this was shortly after watching American Circumcision documentary. It's like,
Mhm.
this is going to get out, and I don't want to go another 15 years, come across some guy that is pissed that he was cut, and not be able to say, you know what, I didn't speak out for you. I
Mhm.
can't. I now
Yeah,
I can say,
that's a little
in
thing.
15 years from today, I can show I've been doing what I can to
Mhm.
end this, and I was speaking up for your rights.
Yeah, I totally 100%. Um, I say I do not want, to not be able to tell my children that, you know, I did this or this. I want to be able to say I protested, for rights, even whenever people would ridicule me, because sometimes what is right is not socially acceptable.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like we can look at all these topics that were just awful, awful things that were allowed to happen because they were legal.
Yeah.
And people saying, oh, if it was wrong, it would be illegal. No,
Mm.
sadly, not the
There's
case.
plenty of things that have happened in history that were legal.
Hmm.
Legal does not equal ethic at all. So the next part of under psychological is suicide, and it sounds like you're aware of some of the suicides that have occurred, like Alex Hardy and Jonathan Conte
Hmm.
and David. Gosh, I'm blank on his name, but anyways,
I almost got it. It starts with an R. David R.
Reamer, Reamer, yeah, that's it,
Reimer.
Reimer,
I
yeah,
pronounced it
Reimer,
Reimer.
yeah. Yep.
I
Yeah, those are
finally.
just a few of the cases, and there's others. In fact, I did an interview with another guy whose friend committed suicide, and his friend committed suicide almost exclusively. it sounded like due to the fact that he was a preputial amputee.
Mm-hmm. My situation, my husband did commit suicide. But I believe it was multiple factors. And, whenever he had revealed to his mother about the circumcision, being something that he didn't want to happen and her basically mocking him, there were many other instances of that from not only what I could see from my own experiences, but the stories that he would tell from his childhood of that sort of abuse, which if your mother laughs about you expressing your feelings about something that was done to you, she's probably a narcissist, and
Yeah.
that does in having a narcissistic mother is something that is very, very awful and awful beyond words, because you have to, as an adult, look at your behaviors and see what is of your parent and not what is of you. You have to really pick apart everything from your upbringing and piece together, why did I do this? And whenever someone who literally taught you how to exist was manipulating you, um, yeah, it can feel like your whole identity is belonging to somebody else.
Yeah.
And shortly before my husband did what he did, one of the last things that he told me was, sorry, my throat. One of the last things that he told me was that he sees his mother in his thoughts and he sees her in his actions. And that's the thing that he hated the most about himself.
Yeah.
And he felt like he couldn't change it and that his thoughts were contradictory, and he was very overwhelmed. And I strongly feel that circumcision and how the mother or father reacts to a person speaking out will speak volumes on narcissism and the upbringing. And then you can piece together what other memories were similar.
Yeah. So part of an overall pattern in parents' behaviors. Yeah.
I know for sure that Jonathan Conte, his mother, was a huge narcissist. The last post that he made on Facebook was thanking mothers on Mother's Day for protecting their children, because he was just completely degraded.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I didn't get into this movement until after Jonathan committed suicide. I'm sad to not have had a chance to know him. I'm very sorry about your loss with your husband.
I really want to be a voice for people being able to look at, their behaviors and analyzing their parents' behaviors and seeing what is of them and what has been taught to them.
Yeah.
Because that is how this cycle keeps being perpetuated. We mimic our parents, and if our parents do not tell us the reasoning behind doing certain things, or they just don't know any better, it's up to us. It's not their fault for what we, you know what I'm saying? If we have the knowledge and the ability to see it, which sometimes we don't. So for those people that don't have the ability to see a bloodstain and protest or whatnot, that's a little bit different. But if you see the knowledge and you still choose to do it, you are perpetuating that cycle.
Yep, exactly.
And even if you do it and you find the information later, you can be a bigger person and have empathy.
Yeah. And for those of people out there that are dealing with similar situations, are having feelings or thoughts much like your husband did, go get help. It does work. I just happen to be married to a woman that works with people that have mental health disorders, and was married. My first wife, she got a master's degree in behavioral science, and she's a counselor or therapist. And yes, definitely go get help. It's out there. Don't wait until things get you too far down and into the gutters that you end up hurting yourself or hurting someone else. Thank you for sharing your story, Nokomi.
Even with all of these negative things happening in our society right now, you can just pull away from, social media, from the news, from everything, and just go outside and see the beauty that makes up, just one single leaf, and think of all those little tiny little cells, and then think of how all of these cells are inside of you trying their very hardest to make you, and you're amazing, and just your words plant a seed.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that story. Okay, so I guess we'll move on past suicide and get into the children aspect of the psychological effects. Okay. So I bring up children. There's an aspect of children that have been cut, obviously, and they might be discovering or figuring out that the harm that was done to them, or that they were generally cut, and might not be happy about it. But typically, young children are they're loyal to their parents. So, like I saw one video where I think James Owen was recording it, where this boy who was cut went along with his dad, saying, "Well, his dad knew best for him, what's best for him," and he went along with his dad out of loyalty, it seemed. But I've also heard of men that said, I started figuring it out when I was pretty young. Now it's not a good thing. But what I also worry about is even children that aren't cut. I worry about my own sons, who they're intact. They are not, victims. They're not physically victims, but they see what I do. This stuff. They see, they actually go out and protest with me, bloodstained pants, stuff like that. Well, they don't wear bloodstained pants because they're not harmed, but they wear white pants. And they see what goes on with social media, and they see people saying things that are just horrific. I think they excuse the behavior of genital cutting of children, and they're disgusted. I can't think of the word, but just like appalled. You could come up with all kinds of words. Like just, I even think that they're probably traumatized by seeing what people will do to children, and I worry about their psychological health from seeing this. But at the same time, I don't want to hide them from the reality of the world. I don't want them to go into the world unprepared.
I would say that I am probably more along the lines of, I don't know if you would call it traditional or not traditional, honestly, but I don't do Santa Claus. I don't do the Easter Bunny. I mean, I will do like Tooth Fairy, but I will, let me clarify. I will do these things, but I will explain the origins. So I won't have my child believing that Santa Claus is a real person, but is a tradition, seen as a person. So I have also put my child in bloodstained pants. He's not bloodstained, but for sort of a shock factor, while he is not circumcised, I haven't seen a small child wearing bloodstained pants. So we did that to really put the message out there, because it's happening on children. So we see the adults in the pants, but yeah. I am like a scientific person, so whenever my child asks me questions, I'll answer in, like I'm not speaking in child talk, really. It's going to be interesting to see how he turns out he's probably gonna be speaking like he's from a scientific journal, maybe. But I'm probably going to leave out the very, very gruesome, details of like the actual procedure until like he's older. But I think he should know about what happens and is educated on his own anatomy so that he can educate others, perhaps. Especially if someone ever decides to try to pick on him, he can use knowledge.
You're actually missing some parts down there and what they do.
Hopefully that wouldn't get him into trouble, but like
my kids say that they've talked a little bit about this topic in school. They're not afraid to.
So I'm just like, yeah. I mean, I plan on homeschooling anyway, so the locker room thing wouldn't even be an existent scenario, but like that's not even, it doesn't even make any sense. I mean, in my locker room, we were just in bras and underwear, so I never saw anyone naked. I mean, I'm honestly wondering where in schools would kids see each other naked? That doesn't make sense.
I actually did a pool party with my oldest son for his school. Multiple classrooms had a pool party one day, and I chaperoned. I volunteered to chaperone, and of course I had to do background checks on all the volunteers, and I actually had the better background check, and they specifically asked me to go into the locker room with the boys, just me, not other men. Because other men don't qualify, so it's you. It's only you. So I did, and how sometimes you have kind of a leader of the pack amongst groups.
Well, so strictly to pool parties. My school didn't have a pool, and we never really.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so we only had gyms, so I don't really know of many schools that have a pool. So that would make sense, I guess. Yeah, but
my junior high and high school had a pool. But yeah, they had it was a community pool at the park where they just walked on down from the school to the pool, I guess. But anyways, the boys did get naked, but the majority of the boys wanted to have privacy when they were getting changed. So there were 2 restroom stalls, and they would wait in line to go into the restroom stall to change. Well, my son, he didn't feel the need. He just went, about 20 feet away from where I was standing. I was kind of standing in the middle of the room. All these other boys were waiting to get into the stall. And packs always typically have a leader. Right? There was this one boy that kind of got the other boys riled up, and they harassed this one boy that was a little chubby. And the boy went in to change, and he leaned up against the door, and the door popped open, and he fell, and he was naked. The boy was a preputial amputee. My son, just 20 feet away, getting changed, completely naked, totally intact. Were they laughing at? The boy that fell. So you can't say, you don't know what boys are going to be, what children are going to be bullied over. You can't. And here on the West Coast, as far as I understand it, it's like a 50-50. So
yeah, even if there's like nothing to bully in the public school system, you will get bullied for something. Yeah. It's another reason why I homeschool.
Okay. Any other thoughts on the children aspect and psychological effect on children?
I feel that telling them that everyone, has different shapes, sizes, whatnot when it comes to circumcision is more detrimental. I mean, I guess depending on the age, you should have age appropriate responses, of course.
Well, they don't typically teach sex ed until you're getting into at least middle school, right? So
I hear a lot of stories on certain groups where parents are like, well, I have bonus children and they're cut, and like, what do I do if they ask me, or if they did ask me, like, what do I say? Like, they're only like 6 or whatnot. And you know, I feel like there should be age appropriate responses aside from everyone's, different. You
Yeah.
could say, there's a procedure that was done. And of course they're probably going to ask why, but age appropriate.
Yeah.
Just be truthful is what I would say.
Okay. All right. So the next item is psychological effect on medical professionals. I don't imagine you're a medical professional, are you?
Nope. I am a doula in training, but that is
Oh,
not a medical professional.
well, yeah, it kind of gets into that. You definitely deal with medical professionals, and you're dealing with, women having babies. So,
Oh, that is one thing. As a doula, any future doula watching or possible present doula, you do not have to condone genital mutilation. You make your own terms.
yeah,
That is one thing that I will not take clients if they plan on mutilating a baby.
yeah. My wife got trained to be a doula herself, and she made that same rule. She only attended, I think, 5 births, something like that. But because of her, she has a condition that didn't allow her to be able to get up in the middle of the night to go to a birth. So she
Oh yeah,
decided to
you gotta
go.
be on call.
Yeah, yeah. It can be challenging to try to deal with some of that stuff. So yeah,
I
but
have
good for you.
rarely seen doulas promoting circumcision.
Mm-hmm.
So they promote home birth, but getting a
Yeah,
separate appointment to do circumcision. And the only reason I'm thinking of this one particular page, the only reason they do this is because they have the guilty conscience of this
mm-hmm.
one particular woman, that she did it to her own son, and she doesn't want other women not doing what she does. Like she wants to feel okay about
Yeah,
what she did. That's what affects the narcissist. They don't want to feel like they did something wrong because it's, they're the victim in the situation. How dare you shame me?
yeah, yeah. So sad. Yeah, it's more like cognitive dissonance.
Oh, like
Yeah,
you said, shock factor too. You're talking about shock factor in a way of like the stained pants. Sometimes I will act as if, sarcastically, like just to bring attention to how they sound. Like I'll flip the script talking about women, like the same exact reasons that people use, like, oh, it's cleaner. Well, I circumcised my daughter. They said
yeah,
it's cleaner. Her future husbands will thank me, and their heads explode.
yeah,
Some of them don't even understand the sarcasm because it is a thing that does exist.
yeah. And they do. They literally do use the exact same excuses.
They do.
You go watch. There's a whole. I've got a whole playlist on YouTube. I didn't create the playlist. Someone called Criteria Nipples created this playlist of all these documentaries done on FGM all over the world. And you watch those videos, and it's like, this is exactly what we hear in the U.S. about male genital mutilations.
And if you're dealing with someone who is extremely narcissistic, they will even say that if they had a daughter, they would circumcise her too.
Oh gosh.
I've experienced
I yeah, I've come across some of those too. It's like that. I've come across some people that were like okay with female circumcision.
which
Well, it's their
honestly,
culture, so let them do it.
I honestly don't think that they are, but they're just not wanting to admit
Yeah.
to something being a human rights violation. Typically people will just be like quiet after you mention, women. It's like it clicks for them, but they're not going to say anything. But
Yeah.
other people deliberately try to act like I'm still standing by it, you
Yeah.
know.
So, since you are sort of a medical professional, are you going into one as a doula? I guess you probably haven't really come across the case yet um, where you were kind of witness to a circumcision or witness to someone that was going to do it.
No, I'm still in training.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm still doing the book work right now.
Yeah.
But thankfully, my course, there's a lot of doula courses out there that they don't cover this topic at all, but I am very thankful that who I'm going through very extensively covers this topic and is actually like slapped with the label anti-circ.
Oh.
I have not, I did experience with my own birth a midwife, which I might end up working with in the future, who cut her first few sons. But when I got with them, they handed me a binder full of information.
Mm-hmm.
And it was full of information about circumcision and vaccines, and they gave their own personal stories.
Mm-hmm.
And she had talked about one of the midwives had talked about how she did cut her first 3 sons, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, they handed me this binder shortly after I had decided that I wasn't going to do it. And I was like, even more confirmation.
Yeah.
So yeah, that really helped in solidifying my husband's, like, it reassured him that it was the right thing. But
Yeah.
it was really good to see a medical professional who was speaking out against it. So that is like my only encounter with a medical professional, aside from that one that forcibly retracted my son, dealing with, circ and whatnot. His recent pediatrician she just asked if he was circumcised. That was, she doesn't manipulate the foreskin at all.
Mm-hmm.
None of it. But yeah.
And so
I'm sure I'll have to gather more people.
Yeah. So I have this on the list because I've seen plenty of cases where people that are medical professionals that learn the truth later on or whatever, and they're distraught or whatever. They have, strong emotions when they come across cases where children are getting their genitals mutilated in, say, a hospital or a clinic, whatever, and like just trying to hear more about how they deal with that, how it affects them psychologically.
So with birth, you definitely can have secondhand trauma. So if a woman relays her experience with her birth at a hospital setting where there is lots and lots of iatrogenic abuse, you can experience secondhand trauma. So like my first birth was a home birth, and my second I transferred due to my uterus is heart shaped, so it felt like with a contraction like baby was transverse. And I endured horrific abuse. Like, I was literally shoved while I was pushing, yelled at not to push repeatedly whenever my baby was coming out with the fetal ejection reflex, which you cannot stop. So yeah, that was, you can definitely have secondhand trauma when it comes to even hearing about stories. So for someone to have performed these surgeries or have been complicit and realize that it's wrong, it's very, I can imagine how. My sister is also a nurse, and she was working the chemotherapy floor, and she told me that at least one person died every shift, and she had to live with knowing that, she was probably the one that killed them. And she said it was such, like, no emotion in her voice, really. So I mean,
I figure to a certain extent you have to numb yourself when it comes to doing medical jobs, especially when it comes to death.
Especially as a nurse, it's not easy work, not at all. No.
But that's also dangerous. If you're too numb, then you don't see the person's pain, and then you don't know that you need to treat it.
Especially if you're told, like, babies can't feel pain, because some nurses literally said that. I've listened to a nurse try to say that because a baby is sucking on a pacifier, they're not able to comprehend pain. But like, if you clip a baby's fingernail too close to the quick, they're quiet 1 second and then they scream bloody murder. That itself should, be enough to disprove that babies don't feel pain.
Yeah. Any other thoughts on medical professionals and psychological effects on them?
Um, my mother was a psychiatrist and she did circumcise my brother, but she passed away from cancer, so I wasn't able to talk to her about it, but I would have been really interested to find out like what she thought in terms of psychology because she dealt with people constantly. I mean,
Yeah.
I was wondering what was going through her mind when she decided to do it to my brother and without thinking about possible psychological effects.
Have you had a chance to read this book at all?
No, but I've seen it on recommended.
Yeah, Ronald Goldman on the psychology side of it. I know that Ronald has also been working with Jordan Norell, who happens to have a bachelor's in psychology. But I haven't come across any psychiatrists on the topic yet. Anyways, that's interesting. Okay, so we'll move on to the psychological impacts of parents. And here. So you got the parents of, you got regret parents, right? And you also have parents that are okay with the fact that they cut their child. Do you have any thoughts on that topic?
On parents, wait, what was the last bit that you said? You kind of cut out a little
So
bit.
you have parents that are regret parents. They had a child cut, and you also have parents that are okay with the idea that they cut their child. And I imagine psychologically they're both affected. Even the ones that believe that they're okay, they're still dealing with a world that much of the world thinks that they made the wrong choice.
So I haven't really entirely thought about the people who have done it and they know that it's wrong, but they still feel that it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like, I kind of feel like that's impossible in a way. Because if you know that something's wrong deep
Yeah.
down, you can try to pretend to the world that it's okay, that you're
Yeah.
fine with it, but deep down, you're still gonna feel sad. I mean, like, as parents, we'll beat ourselves up at the end of the day thinking, I could have been on my phone less, or I could have done this. I could have, like that's uh, probably what I say a good chunk of parents do. And if you love your child, you will look at how you've done things and you'll look at them while they're sleeping and you'll think, I would do anything to protect you.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Do you find
so
yourself
I
having a
haven't
hard
really
time empathizing with parents that
um
have done?
that have circumcised
Yeah,
and
or
feel
even
bad about it.
regret parents. That
Oh,
so
no, not at all. I empathize with them. I can feel their pain. I have quite a few um regret mom friends and I have the maddest respect for them. I have
mm,
intense respect for them because you know they really put their ego aside,
yeah.
and I hear them breaking down crying
Mm-hmm.
because they are so regretful. And there's nothing that they could say or do, and they just hope that their children won't hate them for it.
Yeah. Yeah, I came that close to being a regret parent myself.
hmm
It was the
Like if
11th
I had
hour.
just left it up to my husband, because a big portion of these women, they just leave the decision up to the husband. The husband isn't
Yeah,
educated or he's in his ego.
yeah,
And if the mom knew, you know, she probably would have stepped in. See, I was doing all the birth research. If I had just gave it to him, then I wouldn't be here right now, probably.
Sometimes I
Um,
take the time to just imagine how it would feel today, right now, if I would have let it happen to my own child, and then later on learned about the harm, how I would feel about that.
mhm. I probably would cry about it often. And if I was pretending to the world like it was okay, then I probably would still be crying about it often. I'm a very emotional person, and there are things in my life that I do regret, of course.
Yeah, I think we all
And
do.
yeah, there's I have the biggest respect for regret parents, and they need to know that it's not their fault that they weren't able to access information.
Yeah.
Even
Or given the information from the people that should have given it to them in the
people
first place.
that they should trust, that
Yeah,
they trust to save their life,
yeah,
you know? It's not their fault. And if you just simply tell your children, I wish I would have known the information, you
mm,
know? I mean, because they do a damn good job of lying and telling you that, it's simple, it's
yeah,
painless. They
yeah.
do a good job. Most
You
people
stuck
think
through
that
it.
they use pain management,
Yeah,
you know? So if you said, hey, we don't use pain management, the baby feels everything, this and that, they're just not, it's the doctor's fault. It's not your fault. But if you do know information about it, like maybe look into it a little bit more. Just a little bit. Like you can put it on pause. You can always get the surgery done later on,
yeah.
just wait to research it. Because I promise you, if you research it very thoroughly and
Hmm.
watch a video of it, you won't ever even think it. You would just like be like, get away from my baby.
Yeah.
I'm gonna call Brother K on you. Get away.
Yeah, I have to wonder, with even medical professionals, like how much did they know themselves when when they were pushing it. I mean, I've come across a few doctors that are regret doctors, and I actually speak out about it now. Um, One is quite popular. She's all over um,
I
social
wonder if
media.
it's written in the textbooks. I
Yeah.
wonder how they word things in the textbook.
Well, I actually took some time to look at one, a urology book that was edited for 2020, and I went through it and picked it apart and took snippets. I took, you know,
Mhm.
in Windows, I snipped out the pieces and stuck it in a Word document and gave feedback about every little section that I had a problem with. As far as I'm concerned, it's a very biased book written by U.S. doctors that basically it's all biased towards circumcision. And the fact that even we're using the word circumcision is bad enough. They shouldn't be using a euphemistic
Mhm.
word from religion. They should be using something like, at the very least, posthectomy, or I prefer preputial amputation because that's, for I'm concerned, that's what's going on. You're amputating the male prepuce.
Mhm.
So on one side, I feel crappy that I didn't think to do research myself. It was someone that was luckily someone came along.
I didn't
Um,
think to do research either.
yeah,
Like if
someone
I
came along and
hadn't
said,
joined that
"Here,
group,
read this."
the only reason, yeah, the only reason I joined that group was because I saw water births on Team Mom, and I thought I want a water birth. So I joined a home birth group to try to figure it out. And if I had given birth at a hospital, if they would have asked me to do a surgery that everybody does, I would have said, yeah, you
Yeah.
know. I was 16,
Mhm.
when I got pregnant, and yeah, it's just
Yeah.
so
I don't even have an
they
excuse that
do
I
a
was
really good
young.
job at manipulating people.
I mean, I was 35. I was not young. I can't use that excuse. But I assumed that, well, it's going on, to a large degree. There must be good reason for it, and they wouldn't be doing it if it was bad. So
Hmm.
I'm done. They did it to me. So as far as I knew, it was okay. I mean, that was over 15 years ago. So yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, that was my husband's viewpoint. He said, I'm okay. They did it to me, so I want it done. Like that
Yeah.
was the first thing he said.
Yeah. And that's very
But
common.
I had already researched it. And so if I hadn't have researched it and he had said that, because I didn't even was really like at first before researching it. So I was kind of surprised that he knew about it.
Wow.
But of course it was done to him. Like circumcised men don't even No, I don't think. I mean, how often is this even talked about?
Yeah.
Like, what if your mother or anybody never tells you what circumcision is, and then you're just like offered it?
Yeah.
Everybody does it.
Offered by a supposed authority, a doctor. People look to doctors to be the authorities in that arena, so we trust them. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So it sounds like you're thankful for the intactivists that put that information out there for you.
Mm-hmm. I don't know their name, but I am so thankful.
Yeah.
I wasn't me a few years ago. I don't think I would have looked at future me as protesting, because like I'm an introvert pretty much.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would protest this until I'm, Brother K's age and beyond. I want to see the end of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Same here. I 15 years ago, I would have said you're crazy. I would ever do something like this. Well, here I am.
That's soul growth for you.
Yeah, I guess so. It is what it is. Okay. You said that you've been with Intact Men.
Well, one, yeah.
One. Okay, and Intact Men.
Okay, well, actually, one in person, but
Okay.
they're like far away, so I can't talk about physical experiences except with the one.
Yeah. Well, this is about the psychological effect, and I've interviewed one Intact guy who's quite an avid Intactivist himself, Sam Carnes. He talked a little bit about it, but I've heard from some Intact men that they, up to a certain point in their life, they actually felt bad for being intact.
Yeah, that is something I can comment on. So this one person, he actually like hid his penis from me. We were pretty young. And yeah, he sort of kind of tried to hide his penis from me, which obviously that doesn't really work out well, but like
Actually doing it all in the dark.
I don't know why he felt ashamed for it. Because obviously I didn't really know that was a thing, but looking back now, I do realize the difference. And I didn't get the chance to ask him, and it'd be kind of very weird for me to pop up now and be like,
Okay. Well, I'll keep crossing fingers that I'll come across some more Intact men to talk about this.
I do have a friend who protests many other things, but he hasn't stood with Bloodstained Man as friend, but he does post about it. Who would possibly be okay for you to be okay with you interviewing him?
Well, that'd be great. Appreciate that. Okay, any other thoughts on psychological impacts to anyone?
Not that I can entirely think of.
Okay.
But there was that there is this one topic of circumcised men possibly, being more violent or angry.
Yep.
And even like I don't want to say, like into sadistic things. Because of the association of pain with sex at such, a very crucial time in brain development.
Yeah.
Which I have noticed the tempers on the Cutmen to be, quite a bit worse than the Intact men that I've dated, whether in person or far away. But trust me, there's still some intact assholes out there. Some of the sweetest men have been circumcised, but the majority that I've experienced, I don't know if it's their upbringing or just, the societal pressures, or it can be due to the brain rewiring. But that is something to think about when it comes to this topic, is the impact that it has on temper and relationships with the females in the life, and maybe even males too, considering that, father figures. Like all while you're being created is the scent of your mother and her heartbeat, and then you're just like ripped away from her and then placed right back. So then you're like, yeah. You're just like, well, that I associate this with you now, and I feel like that causes a lot of strained relationships.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, the next section is about relationships. And it starts off with the child-parent trust relationship.
Mm-hmm.
So the thinking is that if the parent can do one thing bad to you or wrong, or not take the time to worry about your health or care about your future or whatever, or else should the child not trust you.
Mm-hmm.
Any thoughts on that?
So that of course makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, again, you're just placed on someone's chest that you were just ripped away from. So at what point can you trust?
Yeah.
A lot of babies don't even want to breastfeed. They just can't.
Mm-hmm. They've been traumatized.
And I wonder what other neurological effects that it does cause. Like, I've read into autism,
Mm-hmm.
other things such as that, and it just makes sense that it would cause issues with trust.
Co-parenting. You've had this. We've already discussed this already, but we kind of have to revisit here. Your husband wanted your son to be cut until you educated him, and so I'm assuming that it created some stress in the relationship.
Oh yes, for sure. He said he didn't want to argue with me over it because I was very adamant. Like, I probably would have left the relationship if he wanted to cut him. Now, the kicker is here you see a lot of anti-activists, people against it. The relationships end up not working out, and then the man wants to take the baby to get it circumcised.
Yeah. There was a case I think in Florida where a 4 or 5 year old boy was.
Yeah, he was like 5 years old.
Yeah.
And he said, I want my old penis back, I believe, shortly after it was done, or that was another case possibly. But there was like a 4 or 5-year-old that was circumcised, said, Mommy, I want my old penis back. Yeah. And there was nothing that the mom could do. Couldn't even take anybody to court, apparently.
Heartbreaking.
And there was also a case of this one old woman that wasn't even related to the boy, pretending to have a different last name that was a different religion, took him and got him circumcised. And it was legal, apparently, because it was her religion, her freedom of religion. Like, how does that make sense?
Not freedom of religion.
But when I did, no, it's not. That's not even your child.
Yeah,
like,
we're talking about the child freedom of religion.
Even if they were, yeah, it's basic human rights. So when I did try to leave my husband, which I tried to leave multiple times, the last time that I left for good, he would not like sign a paper saying that he wouldn't circumcise or do anything else that we had previously agreed on with the parenting, and his mother was in his ear. Yeah, he literally was trying to condone people retracting. He was trying to act like circumcision wasn't a big deal after that, when he was like so against it before, and told me like he convinced coworkers to not circumcise and whatnot, and it was like he was trying to just get back at me, and his mother in the ear did not help. So that was something that we went through at the very end, and I thought, that would never happen to me. Like, I had a somewhat supportive partner who I thought was supportive, but because it's like, how can we research all these functions and listen to a video of it being done, and then just because things don't work out with me, you want to go do that just to seemingly hurt me, like not even kidding. Yeah. Like, I'm not even the one that's going through it.
Mm-hmm.
So that was one thing that it was just really hard for me to comprehend. Like, yeah, why can't you just sign one paper stating that you won't circumcise your child? Because that's pretty much all it takes. Like, you get it notarized, your previous family agreements, like no spanking or whatnot, no circumcision, like what your plans are. Just the problem is people trying to change the plans just to spite the other parent, because I did experience that.
That's sad. Okay, the next relationship is the mother-child bond. You're getting into doula training, so you've probably covered the whole, skin to skin and all that stuff, right?
The golden hour, yeah.
Yeah.
I say that for at least a whole week, like, just be skin to skin with your baby. If mom can't do it, let dad do it.
Yeah.
It's very crucial for, baby's development. I'm pretty old school. I think we shouldn't have a bath for like a few weeks, like let them soak in all their natural oils like they're supposed to be, and just enjoy being with mom.
Yeah.
Of
Sure.
all these different experiences and sensations that are just insane to them. Just think about it. Like, you're all cozy in a very dark place, and then it's extremely bright and cold and dry. You don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
All you know is your mom's heartbeat. Yeah.
Next thing is pedophilia. I'll give you a little bit of thinking on this here first. I actually did a little video. It just kind of struck my mind. That it's like, I wonder if there's a connection between circumcision and pedophilia.
Definitely.
You think so?
100%. If there was 1,000%, I would say 1,000%.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
how can we literally look at someone putting their mouth on a child's penis as anything other than that?
Yeah,
Not only that, but
yeah.
mm-hmm.
The
Not
ultra
only that,
orthodox.
but people, doctors condoning it by talking about the way a penis will look or the size of the penis. Women saying her or his girlfriends or future wives will thank me. Why are you thinking about, your kid getting action? You should just want him to be himself, like, not care what little girls think. Do you want him to, like, have a good partner? First of all, why are you even thinking about it? But for two, don't you want him to have a wholesome partner that, like, doesn't body shame him like you body shame him?
Yeah.
So it's prevalent everywhere. Like, our society is, if someone can just, like, just take a step back and look at all of the symbolism and the promotion of certain things and the pushing of certain things, clothing, and the way music videos are and movies and TV shows, even like Cartoon Network, what they're sort of doing on there. It's pretty. I tried to watch Cartoon Network with my child recently, and there was lots of twerking going on.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Oh gosh.
So
That's sad.
society, why is Netflix being canceled? Pretty much because of twerking all over, that one movie that was hugely, criticized,
Yeah.
rightfully. It's
Well,
just so pushed in the society, and I am very disturbed by it. It's just everywhere, it seems. So we've got to be very careful with our children, and that's one thing I'm kind of looking at the doctors who do these with, like, really skeptical eye, from what I've heard about some of them getting erections,
yeah.
and some of them Yeah,
Let me
I don't trust them.
share with you my theory here. You might know that in the U.S. a very this is it's been gaining popularity as women will get labiaplasty and stuff that they'll get surgeries to tighten up their vagina, and this has become it seems like it's become a desirable thing because when you think about it, when the men are missing that sensitive skin that is sensitive to light touch, what they have mostly left is the pressure, the squeezing of the penis to make them feel good or whatever, right? So labiaplasty or whatever to make the vagina tighter, especially after a woman has had babies. Now it's debatable as to whether the vagina is more loose or whatever afterwards, but if a man is needing that tight vagina to get satisfaction, wouldn't that kind of draw them to young women that haven't had children yet? Or teenage.
See, I haven't entirely thought about that. Are you talking about like the appearance of a vagina? Because
no, not the looks, but the feel. Because a younger vagina is typically tighter than an older one, right?
I feel like a labiaplasty on a woman who has had children, I don't think that entirely affects the tightness per se, because that's like the vulvar area. Maybe there is more pressure, like you're talking about, like the skin being pulled, because as a woman gets aroused, things engorge too. But like after birth, you can use like yoni eggs and such to work on tightening. But in terms of appearance, I haven't really thought about that before. Most men that I have been with have been older. That is an aspect that does play out in my life quite a bit. I don't really get along with a lot of the younger dudes that want to go out and party because, like I want to settle down and have children. So that has rang true with me having older men in my life. But and they have been circumcised.
So my thinking is that intact men don't care how tight, or wouldn't care as much how tight
they don't care for younger women or seemingly tighter vaginas because they have that sensation. It
would be interesting to do a blind study to compare what men prefer, depending on whether they're preputially amputated or not.
The porn really has glorified. I did experience the porn scene, honestly. Like I was on Pornhub and YouPorn for a bit of time, and there is quite a bit of body shaming, like they glorify one of the least common types of vaginas, honestly, because labia is more common than not really having a lot of labia.
That's so sad.
So yeah, there's that. And not only that, but a lot of people look on Pornhub and think that it's pro circumcision, but majority of the men, I would say, are honestly probably intact because, again, you can't really tell.
You have to know what to look for. It's like, I think I was explaining earlier how that one guy that I saw on a porn thing, his scrotum was drawn up and his balls were pulled up to the sides of his penis, and he was definitely cut. And I've seen guys with very little inner mucosa. It's like, well, he was probably cut by a bell, But your typical person probably isn't looking at it at that level of detail. And you can even see like an intact man if everything's pulled back, so you can't really. It seems like you can't tell whether he's intact or not, but I can. Because I'll notice that you'll have all of his inner mucosa, and you look at it. You can, if you catch his why am I going blank on this all of a sudden? His frenulum, it's like it's all there,
Hmm.
so you can tell if you know what to look for. Just because the glands is fully out and open doesn't mean that he's circumcised.
Hmm. So that does completely make sense about, um, you know, circumcised men possibly going more towards younger women if they are missing out on, you know, that does seem like something that could make sense, but it's also like so glorified, like they're even trying to push to make it a sexual orientation, and it
Mm-hmm.
seems like to only be happening in America, so maybe there is that correlation. I don't
Well,
really see them trying to promote
it,
pedophilia as much in these other,
of course, except in the countries where child brides
yeah,
is
child brides.
normalized, right?
But you did say those are countries where there is
Yeah.
circumcision
Oh yeah.
too.
I, I'll,
So
I, I, I would be really surprised to hear about a culture that does child brides that doesn't also do genital mutilation.
mhm.
Yeah.
Maybe this might be a stretch, but maybe I don't know. There's definitely some inner child wounding, you know. I don't know how nothing justifies pedophilia, but
Yeah.
it doesn't make sense how it doesn't make sense in my mind how, you know, that can even be a thing in the first place. But if they are still possibly mentally experiencing childhood wounds and maybe they perceive certain things from a childlike viewpoint,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Does that make sense? Like
Oh yeah.
they're sort of
I mean,
reverting.
again, my first wife, she got a master's degree while I was married to her in behavioral health, and one of the things that is often brought up is called family of origin. So you look at someone's behavior, what's going on with their life or whatever, and you track back to where that behavior started, and it normally goes all the way back to family of origin. So when you were a child, something
Mhm.
happened that set you off on that track to end up where you're at today as an adult.
You hear often about either you heal from the abuse or you can become the abuser. So
Yep.
that I feel like that
Yeah,
applies
it's
to.
very well known that child sexual child molesters were molested themselves when they were
Mhm.
younger. That's very common.
And circumcision itself is a form of,
It is.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Next after pedophilia is doctor-patient relationships.
Mm.
So personally, I could not have a doctor that mutilated genitals. I'd have to go find a different doctor.
Mhm.
And even like nurses or whatever, if I knew that they were promoting or supporting the practice, I'd have a hard time being around them myself.
Yeah, I don't think I could ever have a doctor that, does that. I could never willingly have a doctor.
Yeah. My, my,
Um,
my attitude is that if you're willing to violate your Hippocratic oath there, or be unethical in that way, how else are you going to be unethical when it comes to my treatment?
mhm, precisely.
Any other thoughts on that for yourself?
Mm. So I did have that doctor that retracted my son,
Mm-hmm.
and I wonder if he did have a hand in mutilations before. Ironically, he was my husband's pediatrician too.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, so he actually apparently got in trouble for malpractice at some point that I did not find about until after he retracted my son, of course. Um, it makes me wonder if he had a hand in those things, but
I feel like if someone, does these things to defenseless babies, what conscience do they have if they know it's wrong? I mean, if you hear a baby screaming, of course you gotta know something's wrong, but maybe if you've been conditioned to think that it's just because they're, away from mom or whatever. I mean, it would take a lot of cognitive dissonance, but
Yeah.
I'm sure people have been brainwashed to truly believe it.
Yeah. Especially when you see a medical textbook that says, this is normally removed during circumcision. That's all it says about it. It's like, yeah, I guess that's what you're trained to, and you're trained to believe that it's all good and it's all to reduce STDs or whatever, and you're not taught about the values of it. And
That's a whole nother thing. So whenever a nurse tries to tell me that she deals with uncircumcised men, uncircumcised men, how can you undecapitate somebody?
yeah,
Attack men. They talk about how like it's dirty or whatever, and there's buildup, and I'm like, so you mean you're not doing your job right? Is that what you're trying to tell me? You don't know how to clean your patients?
yeah, the good old nursing home myth.
Yeah, that means that there's something wrong with the nurses, not the poor men.
Yeah.
Oh, and also the cousin's uncle, sister's brother excuse. So like I knew someone who
Yeah.
had a problem, so I have to get my child, circumcised. And it's like, well, my aunt had breast cancer. Does that mean I remove my children's breast buds?
I had to have my appendix removed as an adult. Should I get those removed?
It's like breasts have one purpose, to breastfeed. Foreskin has 16 functions at least. So
Yep.
would you cut off your daughter's breast buds?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. I just don't get why people stick to that logic. Yeah. Okay, so the last thing under relationships is friends and family.
I try to fight saying anything at Thanksgiving or Christmas.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That is a big thing. My family knows how I feel. My friends know how I feel. I have lost friendships over it. And I have wanted to cut family out for it because some of them seem to promote it. And it doesn't matter what I say or what groups I add them to, they just seem to want to do it.
Yeah.
And in my eyes, it's like wanting to hurt a baby deliberately. So yeah, definitely need to try to be quiet on these things during the holidays. But I've had so many families and that I have made that have reached out to me and thanked me for spreading information because they were gonna have a boy.
Yeah.
And I see them also common groups that I've added them to, and it's just, if I could at least save one baby, it's worth losing like 1,000, 1,000,000 friends. If I could just, help.
But dealing with all this cognitive dissonance of family members and friends and even people that you don't even know on the internet or whatever, sticking to the myths and all that, it can be frustrating. It can tear you down, make it difficult to be an intactivist, and that's why we have a lot of intactivist burnout.
Mm-hmm.
So, do you feel like you've struggled with burnout yourself?
Burnout is in what, like just fed up with?
Well, for me, I find myself avoiding certain posts or certain Facebook groups or whatever because I know that what I'm going to see is another person talk about how they're getting their son circumcised or child or whatever, and it's like I've dealt with enough of that. So I'll do something different for intactivism instead. But not everyone not everyone
Yes,
has other ideas on what else they can do that is less triggering or whatever to actually to still do something positive for intactivism.
So I have definitely experienced that. I took like at least half a year break, maybe even more than that. And I didn't post a single thing, didn't say a single thing. I sort of unfollowed the groups because it was like very negative, and I just needed
Yeah.
to focus on more positive things in that period because it does get to you. You need to take a step back to look at the positive things. And sometimes life just gets super busy.
Yeah.
But in those mean times, like I do have stickers that I can leave on things if I want to, and I don't have to be confronted by anybody because sometimes you just don't want to have to explain to people that cutting genitals is wrong, that are not yours,
Yeah.
So sometimes you get hit with that reality that, like I'm literally telling somebody who doesn't want to hear that they don't have to hurt somebody, like it can get to you. But yeah, I feel like everyone should definitely take a break at some point. You don't have to completely stop because again, like even my bumper, my car bumper license plate thing, like I have a bumper sticker that said foreskin's not a birth defect, and my license plate cover says leave your circumcision harms or stop circumcision, leave your baby whole. And I don't talk to anybody. Sometimes I'll get like honks of support, thumbs up or whatever.
Yeah.
For that period of time where I didn't talk to anybody or get on any posts, yeah, I was driving around in my car. So
Continue to spread the word.
I definitely.
Yeah, I feel that it helps a little bit to see people say they're thankful for intactivists. I am personally very thankful for intactivists. If it wasn't for someone that passed information on to my wife, who passed it on to me, our at least our first son would not be intact. So I'm very thankful. I'm thankful for people like
I
you.
believe after one. Oh, thank you. I'm thankful. It doesn't matter how many people throw insults as long as you know that you're doing the right thing. At least in terms of your intuition.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you just need to follow your intuition despite what the external is. And sadly, our external is this barbaric thing being pushed on our youth.
Yeah. A couple last sections of this. Hopefully they'll be short. FGM, or female genital mutilation. There seems to be a pretty widely held belief that FGM is very much tied to MGM, or male circumcision, and that as long as male, genital cutting is allowed and accepted, that female genital cutting will continue to be, the door will continue to be open for that and will continue to occur. What's your thoughts on that?
I feel like if you give some people wanting to make money an inch they mile, I feel that, yeah, you need to cancel both of them immediately.
Yeah.
And sure, it'll probably still be happening under the table by people who are possibly outraged,
Yeah.
but it needs to be ridiculed, it needs to be shamed, it needs to be looked at because how can we really tiptoe around this? It's not something that's just rainbows and butterflies and cupcakes. Like over 100 babies are murdered, die, just randomly. No, they're murdered. So as long as we allow boys to continue to be murdered by it, girls will continue to be murdered by it.
Yeah.
It does go hand in hand.
Yeah.
We want to push for equality in our society, but what about the first thing that happens that's unequal?
Mhm.
What about the first thing? Like, people talk and women equality, but what are we doing at birth immediately that is, you know, it's just
And you bring up the
I
the money
really
aspect, and in female genital cutting cultures, money is I mean, it's not exactly cash or whatever like we have in the U.S., but there is an economic aspect to it that keeps it going. You have the moils over there, the ones that are doing the cutting, that they live off of that work, and you also have um, families who sell their daughters um, and trade for goats or whatever, and they need that in order to survive, to feed themselves and all that. So they're selling their daughters, and they can't sell their daughters if they're not fixed.
oh my gosh.
Yeah, and there's
Worldwide, like, just
yeah,
I can't
and
even. That's just mind blowing. I didn't even know selling their daughters.
yeah, yeah. There again, the criteria nipples um, uh, playlist has a whole bunch of videos on it. It depends on the specific culture, obviously, but yeah, different cultures have different cutting techniques and different reasons behind it all. But in general, it all comes down to the same root stuff of trying to control people.
I'm just trying to. I often go back to the thought of what was the first person thinking whenever they thought that they could make it widespread? Like, they do it to themselves?
Yeah,
I bet they did not. I mean,
I don't know. Maybe they hate themselves enough to do it. I don't know. Who knows? I mean, that was a
whoever
long time ago.
they were insane. Like, who looks at their. Who would think that?
Yeah.
Um,
You can read Rosemary Romber's
people,
book. There's some theories in there about why it started happening. Kind of interesting.
she passed away recently, didn't she?
Yeah, back in
Are
January.
you talking
Well,
about
it's been about a year now since she passed away.
my goodness.
So, yeah, her book, Circumcision, The Painful Dilemma, it is available online. You can, just, if you want to read it on a website. A group of us are working on making it available via an ebook. We're going to put out working on another edition of it, kind of a remembrance edition.
I never got to meet her, but
No,
she
me
was
either.
a very awesome
Well,
woman.
I chatted with her a lot online before she passed away. Okay, the very last thing here. Hopefully, this will be a little more positive. Social productivity. So, if genital cutting wasn't occurring, we'd have all these doctors spending more time fixing cancer or whatever, right? Saving lives instead of cutting genital genitalia. And we'd have more people like you and I, instead of spending our time doing this or trying to educate other people, we would be, who knows, all kinds of things we could be doing that would be productive and valuable to society.
I feel, of course, if this was a perfect world without genital cutting, I would be doing what I plan on doing anyways, because I don't spend nearly as much time arguing or debating with people about it anymore. because if someone is receptive to information, I'll give them information, but if it's clear that they're being a brick wall, I won't even really try anymore. But for me, I do like resin crafts, and I'm studying to become a doula and write poetry, and I just do what seems fun, and put my art out into the world. And yeah, right now I'm spending, about the same amount of time as I would be if I wasn't advocating. I mean, it's just there's not really that many protests in person right now. So I've just got to be online to do it. And I'd say I'm doing about the same amount as I mean, it's not that much. It doesn't take that much to, just write a comment to ask someone to research, and to give them links to groups and whatnot.
Yeah.
I don't think that it takes that much. And especially when I'm just driving in my car and people see my bumper sticker. I mean, I'm just driving anyways. So for people that don't want to be hands-on or are worried about their productivity, like they don't want to take time out of their day to send links or send people to groups, they can totally do something like that, or they can just, leave stickers or cards. Yeah, or they could even get they could just get regular stickers to put on letters that they mail out even. There's a lot of things that they could do. But yeah, I've just been focusing on my schooling and my art.
Cool.
And I feel that art itself is helping the world because there's a lot of messages that come through art. Yeah.
There's even, I guess, I wasn't too long ago, there's an art piece that included a piece of foreskin at a art museum or something not too long ago, and it made the news. Yeah.
I actually saw these pots, like potted plants that had uncircumcised penises and intact penises, of course, and it went viral. And there were people asking in the comments where a circumcised one was, and they were also they found one that they thought was circumcised, but it wasn't.
Oh, that's
And
right.
they were still like shocked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think John Geisker, when he did a presentation, he actually showed some images from, I think in Japan, there's this place where there's these huge statues of penises.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
I don't think
What's that?
I don't think I've seen them.
No. Bet you could look it up. Well, anyways, that's the end of the list, Nokomi. Is there anything else you'd like to add to this this conversation about circumcision harms?
Not that I can think of, really.
Okay.
I think we've covered most things pretty in depth. Hopefully we'll see the end of it pretty soon. I mean, there's such a push towards equal rights and such, and I feel that more and more people are waking up every day, and I think we'll see it mainstream pretty soon. And it's getting out there.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for doing this interview, and thank you for your advocacy work.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Have a blessed night.